create it. Looks like it's good now. All right. Let's see. Live broadcasts. It says it's upcoming, but let's see. Get a clipboard. I'll send it to you. There you go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Saturday stream, MBTI stream. I wasn't here last week. My grandfather is currently in hospice, so I've got family over, and we're all chipping in, trying to take care of him in his remaining days.
Also, I guess I'll do my intro. Hi, guys. I'm here this time.
I forgot. Harley's here. I'm all trying to do everything else. I forget that I have someone with me today. Today we've got Harley, and she has a surprise for this stream. I don't know what the surprise is.
I do.
And so I'm vaguely concerned as to what it could be today.
As you should be. So when we hit our peak and we have the high amounts of people, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to want to witness this, I will do that surprise.
What is gonna You're giving me anxiety. It's
Urchin, you can trust me.
all right.
All right, so did you send me links?
I did send you a link.
I shall post that in the Discords.
Hello, PenCap. No, hospice is when you are giving someone palliative treatment, so it's more for making them comfortable because they don't have a whole lot of time left. So he's not, I guess you would say that he's doing as well as he could be given his circumstances, I think.
Correct.
So.
Kind of a waited out game at this point.
Yeah.
When you get on hospice, unfortunately.
But, you know, the man's 87 years old and ESTJ. He went to work every day. He moved his way up at the cannery way back when. And he had the stereotypical American life. He had the wife, the 2.5 kids, a 2-story house, lots of land, all that fun stuff. So.
Where are your announcements? There they are.
That's fixed. Harley, did we actually have a topic for today's video or stream?
I don't think we did, because we decided that because they're so long, it's kind of difficult for us to actually do just one topic.
What if we shortened it down?
Let me go through the requests and see what everybody's been requesting. I think it's this.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. I'm actually doing the broadcast now.
Okay.
Did they take that away?
No idea. Anyways, but if we don't have a topic, then as per the usual, I am here to talk about MBTI or answer your MBTI questions.
There it is.
Or we can just chill out. As a matter of fact, I can put something on in the background. I'm not exactly sure what it could be.
You're not supposed to watch. You're not supposed to play video games. That was part of the agreement, sir.
I do not recall this agreement.
I was supposed to talk more. You're supposed to not play video games.
Why would I agree to that?
Because you're crazy.
Because I'm what? Crazy?
You're crazy.
Crazy?
Yeah.
Weird? Abnormal? Anomalous? Maybe a little bit.
All right, here we go. YouTube video suggestion.
Hi,
Have you gone
Shattuck.
through these?
Say what?
Have you gone through the videos suggestions?
No, it's been a while.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna start there.
I figured you would have MBTI questions. Let's see. But I'm more curious about the surprise, whatever that happens to be. Or is that
we need more people.
we need more
Start
people
getting everybody
here?
to come onto the stream, guys. All
Let's
right,
see.
so somebody wants to know about the abnormities that are part of loop functions.
Part of what functions? Loop functions?
Looped functions.
Uh,
As far
I
as intelligence goes.
Abnormalities in regards to loop functions
Yes,
as far as intelligence goes.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I understand if we're talking about function loops, right, which are things that could happen, but it's not, once again, over my 10 years of experience, people don't just stay in these kind of loop things. You are essentially who you are as a person. 80 to 90% of the time is going to be those first two functions, which don't necessarily loop. But then again, I'm not exactly sure what. I've heard so many different definitions of what loop means. So remember that we use all the functions every day. Some functions we use more than others, and so to be stuck in some kind of loop, I would assume that if that was happening to you, you would be in a psychiatric facility. If that was happening.
From my experience, the only thing I've ever noticed from as far as loops go, like you said, very short durations. They normally don't last any more than a maximum a month. Normally no more than 3 weeks. As far as intelligent, like anything abnormal with your intellect itself, no, I've never noticed a person that went dumb just because they were in a loop. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not how the human brain works. You can't just shut off parts of your brain so that you become this very specific personality that only uses these two functions over and over again. That's not reality at all. So
I'm not sure where Ben got that, but yeah, there's the answer to that question.
Here's one from Splurg Thurgolferder. That's a name. Let's see. Hello, y'all. Happy Saturday. Hi, Bob. Let's see. I am recently ex-Mormon ENTP with an ISTJ father and INFJ mother. I found it interesting how certain types of people would stay for different reasons. The number one thing was that people were probably around 80% introverted sensors, especially if you're in the, a religious community. At least in the adults, I could go on forever about that alone. Followed by strong extroverted thinkers, INTJs, for example, and introverted feelers who may leave depending on the amount of trauma they receive. It might not make a great video. Not sure what the question was in that. I just thought it was. I saw recently ex-Mormon and ENTP in the same sentence, and I was like, that's weird.
Let's see here.
Let's see. Yes, though, we can touch up on religious communities. Religion is perpetuated by introverted sensing. That's why we have religion. That's why religion still exists. It's because people who have a strong preference for those kinds of traditions keep pushing them forward. And of course, most of your personality is genetic. So if you were born to, let's say 2 introverted sensors, you yourself are very likely to also be a preferenced introverted sensor. So that's why we have what we have, religion-wise, and other things too. But religion in particular is introverted sensing controlled, pushed, perpetuated. Let's see. How about factors that make it people impossible to type? Um, hmm.
I have a few.
So I don't think that there are too many factors that would make it, in quote, impossible to type someone. I I have, and most of the time when you're getting when you're typing someone and it seems like they're trying to give you bad answers is when it's someone who has some information about MBTI, and so they attempt to behave in a manner that is congruent with the personality type they identify with. Um, and unfortunately, excuse me, and unfortunately for most of them, they can't help but let those other functions come out when you're asking questions. They can't help it. Um, you try to get candid responses from them when you're talking in person. So that's why I don't do typings over chat or text rather. Um, people will take a lot of time to thoroughly answer the question. They'll take several minutes. They'll go to Google. They'll try and look up what they're supposed to respond with and do their absolute best to give you an answer. But when you're talking to someone, through voice, you can notice if they're taking 2-3 minutes to answer your question. You can hear the clickety clack of a keyboard or whatever. So hello, MS, multiple sclerosis. Is that that's when I see MS, that's the only thing that comes to mind. And Microsoft, like MS Paint.
I also have noticed that people do that. And it's more apparent when you have people who are really, really, in a sense, knowledgeable about functions.
Mm-hmm.
You will notice that a lot of them will try to push particular functions in order for them to appear. But
Yes.
like Urchin said, you can't really hide behind it for too long, especially if we give you questions that kind of throw you off your game, so to speak.
You can try. Yeah, it's I would imagine that if you are just now learning about MBTI, there's going to be quite a bit that's going to throw you off, for sure. And as I said, I've been in this racket for over 10 years, so I've seen a lot of the tricks. Um, Dosa asks, how do you figure an ESTP and ENTP friendship would go? Potential clashes. I have an ESTP cousin that I've known since childhood. We always get along. We're always having fun. Uh, being, who I am, he mostly enjoys a certain kind of game. He mostly enjoys, of course, first-person shooters, Twitch-based reactionary games. That's most of the games that he has played. Now, as he got older, he started playing more games that you can min-max in. So he has enjoyed games like Baldur's Gate or Divinity, but we don't really have problems. Extroverted feeling is a great function to have if you're trying to get people to like you. So even if there's an activity that he wants to do that I wouldn't particularly enjoy, I know how to fake enjoy it just so that I can maintain this friendship. Because 90% of the time, we're on the same page about a lot of stuff. But when it comes to, what kinds of activities or interests we're going to have, he's more into, the everyday kind of things. For example, he likes to do ultimate frisbee, on occasion, which is not, that's outdoor activity. You got to be around grass, not always my thing. But for the most part, we get along. We don't have any issues, and I would assume that would be the same for any other ENTP and an ESTP. However, if you are talking to a much older ESTP and you don't really know each other, they're going to think of you in a specific manner. Of course, you would need to just essentially listen to everything that they have to say and kind of just agree with it. Because if you start talking about these possibilities and what ifs and whatnot, that will irritate them in conversation. So there is that. Let's see. What about ISTP and ENTP friendships? Well, I was actually talking
Shit, my
about
phone
this.
died.
Oh, Harley's back. I didn't know she was gone. So I have known a number of ISTPs, and I've always gotten along with them. ISTPs are a bit different than an or than an ESTP in that there are some topics that they do want to touch on and talk about. Like they have their own ideas for, their own version of abstract ideas. So they oftentimes want to talk about politics. Not all of them, but there have been a number that I've talked to on the Discord that enjoy talking about politics, and I usually enjoy hearing their perspective on it. It's it's still very no nonsense. This is reality, therefore this shouldn't be happening. These people shouldn't be arguing about it, and kind of stuff. But it is refreshing to listen to someone who is not concerned whether or not whether other people agree with what they're saying when it comes to pushing their logic out there. So I don't have problems with ISTPs. I've never had much of an issue. There was only, maybe when they have a little too much to drink, maybe they can get a little bit aggressive, understandably. But outside of that, no. Let's see. Which types love strategy games? Chess, SimCity, Edge of Empires, the most. Which of them love them the most? So I have seen ISTPs and and Harley's gone. ISTPs and INTPs seem to really enjoy strategy games, not necessarily about combat or battle, or tactics and strategy, involving that, but they enjoy a strategy. They oftentimes want to employ some kind of a strategy when, even if it's just a building game. My INTP friend of 20 years, he enjoys games like, I mean, he did play games like Total War, but he enjoys, it's called Factorio or something, something like that. So they do enjoy games that involve strategy, some forms. So like chess, for example, there's a lot of them enjoy chess. They want to implement their own style, their own plans, ideas, to see if it works, and not always in a player versus player setting.
How many people are we at now?
I have no idea. Let's see. I'm just answering questions so far. I would love to see an ENTP who ends up in a managerial position over an INTJ, INFJ, or ENTJ just to watch. That would be something to be concerned about for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, my Discord sounds are on.
Might want to turn those off.
Is it notifications that I just need to?
Yes.
Disable all sound notifications. Okay, good. Now, see, last time I did this, I forgot to turn them back on, and so a bunch of people were trying to get a hold of me and had no idea. Let's see, but thank you, Harmony. Okay, thank you. Let's see. As for Shadok, his thought, if you were in charge of those particular personality types, you would with the INTJ and the ENTJ, you would always need to be doing everything exactly the way that it needs to be done, because both the INTJ and ENTJ are looking for you to make mistakes so they can immediately rat you out to your superior so that they can take your position. So there wouldn't be a whole lot to watch unless you were following around one of those two personality types to see which one is trying to one up the other and ratting out the person in power. Let's see. How do different MBTI types approach decision making in leadership roles? Well, they approach decision making based off of their decision making function. So if you have, let's say extroverted feeling, they want to make sure that everyone is going to be okay with whatever the decision is going to be made. So for example, like an ESFJ, they're going to delegate the decision-making process to the whole group. Just let them figure it out. They're not going to be worried about coming up with any logic on their own. They have people for that. So extroverted feeling is going to let everyone else handle that thing. Extroverted thinking, of course, they want the logic of everyone, including their own. They want all of everyone's logic to be consistent. And I would imagine that more often than not, they use a more of a democratic system for what is the most logical course of action. So if one person, if there's one more vote for this course of action, then they'll decide that that must be the logical course or approach. As examples, let's see. And of course, introverted thinking, they want to come up with their own understanding, logic, reason for the correct course of action. Let's see. Introverted feeling, does this decision align itself with my own morals and values? So let's see. Is it uncommon for introverted thinking users to be bad at math? How did you do in school at math? Well, I have talked to a number of people about whether it's introverted thinking or extroverted thinking that have said that they don't like math, or they're not great at math, or it confuses them, or things like that. I have of course met those people. Me, I've always enjoyed math. It was not a super passion of mine, but I did enjoy the idea of a formula that would always give me supposedly a correct answer. And I try to, for example, I take that same concept for real life when it comes to people. I did enjoy that, but I didn't do schoolwork in school, which led to some uncomfortable childhood.
And then we're so just focused on the test.
Are you good at math, Harley?
Yeah, I'm all right with it.
There you go. Let's see. MS says I'm going to make you laugh right now. Well, that would be good. Let's see. Well, no one important needs to reach you, and it helps our ears. Oh, yeah, that could very well be true. Thank you for also reminding me. Let's see. You're an ENTP managing an ISFJ. Just one? Like your wife? Like, I don't know. You said you know how to fake enjoy it. Do people not notice that it's fake? I would imagine that in my very early formative years, people probably knew. But as you get older, you learn to pick up on what tells you're giving away, and you can correct them. So, no, people don't notice very often when I'm being fake. The ones that do know when I'm being fake somehow have been, let's say, other ENTPs or ENFPs. They tend to know when you're fake. Some very experienced ESFJs have also noticed. Can MBTI type influence a leader's communication style? Yeah, I would think so. When I'm attempting to be the leader of anything, most of the time I delegate many tedious step-by-step procedural processes to other people, to others. I'm not big into it. But when it comes to inspiring people or needing to give them a reason to keep going or to follow my line of reasoning, I do enjoy the personal touch. I want to go to that person, have the one-on-one. We're going to talk about this. If something's wrong, if they're being a little bit of a broken cog in the machine, I will go talk to them, and I will personally fix them. Or fire them. It's certainly one or the other. Didn't do schoolwork either. I always wanted to be outside. Well, outside, especially as a child, outside can be a lot more entertaining than sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. So it sounds crazy, but it works very well. Why hasn't the ENFJ taken your job yet? Let's see. What are some INFJ people slash characters? So there's not a whole lot. However, there was one particular afternoon in which I decided that I needed to try to find some INFJ characters, or the ones that I believe to be INFJs, because being 100% certain on TV characters is tough, but I usually have a a fair grasp on the personality. Uh, Sam Winchester from Supernatural seems to fit a great many of the stereotypes for INFJ, as well as Lorraine Warren in the Conjuring movies. I had gotten the impression that she was INFJ as well. If I can think of some more, I will mention them. Do you guys want to have some fun? Says Harley.
Yep. So, all right, guys, do y'all want to have some fun with Urchin?
Hang on. I'm answering questions because
Oh,
I am so I am so concerned with whatever's going to happen next. What are effective ways for INTJ leaders to manage a diverse team? What do you mean by do you mean just different personalities? Well, so one of the you try to look for universal ways to deal with people. Now that's going to be the most efficient way to be a leader. Make sure that you figure out a plan that works for most people, and then if the other people don't conform to it, then well, you axe them. In the case of an INTJ in leadership, usually the most effective form of keeping everyone in line is threatening to fire them. uh, that is a great way to keep people in line. But if it's a crazy diverse team and no one agrees with each other about any course of action, then you picked the wrong team members. You need to have people that can mesh well and work together. Which would be the fault of yours, being the leader. That would be your fault. Getting to know your people and say what?
Time for you to reassess.
You might need to reassess or bring in a third party to help you manage them. Let's see. How can an ENFP leader balance creativity with practicality? Well, finding creatively practical solutions would be super helpful. It also depends on the kind of work that you are in. So if you're working a job at the Walmart, there isn't oftentimes a whole lot of use for creativity. In many of our streamlined jobs, there's just no room for it. But an example would be my brother. He works with essentially in behavioral something. Anyways, he deals with other human beings that are no longer fit for society. And so every day he has to come up with a creative solution for each individual person to get them to calm down, to get them to focus on certain kinds of work, or to relinquish old habits, kinds of things. So in that particular instance, being creative, being able to adapt to the needs of this specific person, that is very practical. It allows them to feel a connection between themselves and communicate. So I think that is
and as an ENFP, you would also have that FI. Don't be afraid to use that to your advantage as well.
Well, ENFPs oftentimes have a great understanding of how someone else feels.
Mm-hmm.
So very once again, you've got to be creative and is very practical. So it's How can a leader balance creativity with practicality? I don't think that they need to be exclusive to one another. I think you can put both together. Let's see. Is tertiary introverted sensing also rebellion? Not in my experience. No. The INFPs and INTPs still hold on to a number of traditional uh, ways of living. They very much can, especially when it comes to like listening to their parents. They they're usually much more well-behaved children most of the time, unless of course they happen to grow up in a family where there is very little in the ways of rules or structure. But most cases, they're very well-behaved. Good kids. Just in the case of an INTP, yeah, they're a little bit Aspergery, and then of course with the INFP, they're a little bit yeah, when they're young, mind you. We're talking kids. They can be maybe a little more emotionally unstable, possibly with within reason, but they grow out of some of those things. Except for the Asperger's, Michael's still kind of tismy. Let's see. How can MBTI insights help in resolving conflicts between leaders and team members? Well, once again, if you've got this super crazy diverse set of personalities on a team, then there's going to be a lot of ways that could be used to resolve that conflict. But if you're, let's see if we can't think of an example. If you're dealing with, let's say, an extroverted sensing preference person, the most likely the reason that you are having an issue is because they noticed something that wasn't as A to B as it could be. It's not as maybe efficient as a word we might use. So they want that fixed. They may be missing some data points, like, oh, okay, so this appears to me that you could be doing this a lot more efficiently, but they didn't notice that they need this other point involved to make this work. So they are just missing it. You would just have to communicate on the things that they were missing. Extroverted sensors may not be thinking of all the possibilities involved, so therefore you may need to give them more information, which can totally calm down the situation. If you have a extroverted intuitive who has a problem, I imagine it's not going to be so much a problem as it is, I have an idea, while this could possibly maybe work better. And in which case, that it could end up being a lot better, but you would understandably want some kind of evidence and or proof that it was going to work better. But I guess just asking them what their issue is could be easily solved.
I'll be right back shortly.
And Harley left again. Let's see. Does the introverted feeling really help an ENFP? Seems like people don't tend to like them. There are a lot of the reason that ENFPs aren't typically well liked is because, or as this stereotypical, this kind of blanket statement, oh yeah, nobody seems to like ENFP so much. That's because a lot of people mistype in the community. ENFPs are, generally speaking, if things are going well in their life, they are incredibly chill human beings that don't generally have problems with other people. So it's what you're getting is there's a lot of ESFPs, there are some INFPs, there are some other personality types that type themselves as ENFP. It's obviously wrong, and then they start giving that personality type a bad rap. Yes, as Bob says, if their FI isn't out of control, they are fun, funny, and sweet. Yes, that is correct. I like INFP's introverted feeling. It's fun to mess with them. It can be entertaining for some other personalities to poke the bear, as it were. It has its moments. What are ISTPs like as kids? How can you spot them? I haven't spent a whole lot of time around ISTP children. Most of my childhood was in Central California, and so there was a lot of introverted sensing in that particular area. So, um, not a whole lot in that. But what you should expect is a child who is trying to gain a bunch of personal understanding of the world around it, which makes sense because most children are trying to do that. If you have a 5-year-old kid, they're still trying to figure out how reality works. So a lot of kids are going to be behaving that way. The they'll ask questions just like a normal kid. It's when they get old enough to start experimenting with the world around them. That's when you start noticing, well, what is it that they're preferencing exactly? So in the case of a small ISTP child, they're going to want more of a personal understanding, and they're going to be more hands-on with things. They want to build stuff, take things apart, et cetera, et cetera. Which, once again, that's not specific to ISTPs. You need to it's when the child has more options, then you can start noticing what they're preferencing. But when they're very, very small, it can be difficult to notice. Let's see. I have an ENFP and ESFJ parent. Can't see how my sibling ended up INTJ. Well, it's mutate. Just to give you the benefit of the doubt, and that your parents are ENFP and ESFJ, which I have seen that pairing before. Uh, Mutations do happen in people. Intelligence can all of a sudden, just show up. Like high levels of intelligence can just show up in a child from two generally mediocre parents, as an example. And same with personality. How is that wiring made? Is it? It's not always going to be genetic. Like for example, IQ is supposed to be around 80% genetic. Well, that other 20%, where does it come from? Some kind of mutation somewhere. So it's possible that mutations do happen. MBTI is used in CIA and Mossad. Well, that makes sense to me. Uh, the reason that I took an interest in MBTI at all is because I ended up reading the cognitive functions and thought, hey, I've seen all of this in real life. So, and then it's all about the experimenting, doing your own research, talking with thousands of people in person, and traveling across the country. It's MBTI is describing things that happen in real life, at least in terms of the cognitive functions. So I don't see a reason why people wouldn't use it when trying to manipulate others, if you have the proper experience on it and the proper information. I think certain time periods or generations still have the same function frequencies, like the 50s USA versus ancient Greece, boomers versus generation, because it seems like they are very different values and functions prioritized. So my INTP friend loves to tell me about how when there was lead in the gasoline way back when, supposedly it caused brain damage, some form of brain damage, mild brain damage, with a lot of people from the boomer generation. Now, I'm not saying that if you've got brain damage, then you're an introverted sensor. That's of course not what I'm saying. I don't think that's what he's saying either. What I'm simply drawing I'm trying to draw a pattern here between a lot of boomers being introverted sensors and there was lead in the gas. So it's possible that whatever that form of brain damage caused may have maybe stifled some other cognitive functions, like creativity or personal ambition, and instead they ended up kind of following. Let's see, I skipped Wildman's question, apparently. Let's see, Wildman feels like I'm an INTJ. Okay. Let's say, oh, there it is. Let's see. What are ISTPs like as kids? No, I answered that one. I'm just saying that it would be you can keep an eye out for a child that you believe is going to be an ISTP, because of course they want to be hands-on, they're going to be more direct, and they're going to talk to you about their own personal logic on it, even when they're missing the data points. Because kids are oftentimes missing a great deal of data points before making a conclusion about something. So you can keep an eye out for that kind of behavior, and that child may turn out to be an ISTP. But it's to know for certain, you need to give them a whole bunch of options, which comes later with age, and then notice what it is that they're preferencing. Let's see here. I'm sorry if I am skipping questions. My assistant has disappeared, so you're dealing with me at the moment. I thought if I didn't answer a question, please put it back in, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Let's see. Is that what happened to host Eric of TWFP? I don't know who or what that is, but if they were growing up in the era of lead in the gasoline, and they were in let's say a city where there was a ton of cars, then anything's possible. Um, yes, lead poisoning. They tell me the story, especially as of late with all the family here. They tell me the story of a great grandpa Jay, who was a shine runner during the Prohibition days, and one particular afternoon he ended up distilling gin in a lead radiator, then drank it. he was uh, he was not he was not right after that for certain. Let's see. He just made a video about you today. Oh, well, good. What are the strengths of an INFP in a leadership position? The strengths would be that they very much care how everyone feels. And I mean how they feel, and not necessarily their well-being, if they're making their rent, or if the things are going well with their significant other. They care about how they feel. Maybe be able to send people to HR before something stupid happens. That would be the at least one of the strengths that they can bring to it. And then, of course, they can use their extroverted intuition for other things besides knowing how other people feel. They're coming up with their own ideas, things that feel right to them, of course. Um, so that can absolutely be a thing. Why does one moment I am being okay. Uh, Hopefully that mute worked, but I've got all kinds of family coming by. Let's see. Listen, ex-CIA agent on MBTI, Andrew Besmonte. Oh, let's see. Why does an ENTP's extroverted intuition come off so low energy sometimes compared to an ENFP? I'm ESTP, and I find I almost overpower ENTP, but ENFP exhaust me. Well, now this is going to be from my experience alone. I extroverted feel when people talk to me. I mean, now when you have extroverted intuition in the lead position, you are living in it. Typically, you not just typically, you absolutely are. You live in this. It's not something you can just turn off. Even when you're having a conversation with someone, your mind is out there thinking about completely off the wall, most likely not even relevant to what it is that you're supposed to be talking about. And so you use the extroverted feeling. You do a lot of nodding. You show them that you're listening. You're engaging in conversation, because what you would know by now that whatever you want to talk about is going to bore 75% of the people you come across. And so you're going to learn to cope with that reality. And so you end up just shutting up and listening. But it's the extroverted feeling that's going to give you the impression that the ENTP is just wanting to hear you talk about whatever it is that you're talking about. Whereas now, when it comes to ENFPs being, well, how did you put it? Uh, I guess more high energy than the ENTP. I don't notice that either with ENFPs. I haven't noticed them being super always high energy all the time, especially when they're also confronted with someone who's talking about more extroverted sensing related topics. They're still very chill. They don't. They'll be doing their own thing, and they're not going to be as good at pretending like they're listening as the ENTP. But if you're talking about an ENFP being in quote high strung, INFPs, when they actually get a chance to unload and they think that in that current environment they can that they're able to talk about the things that they talk about, they can seem very high energy because that's how they extrovert. That's what you're going to be noticing is that extroverted intuition in the active position, as I call it. So it's possible that the ENFP you may have met was an INFP. INFPs can be very exhausting when you give them a chance to talk with you and you're not as interested in their feelings related topics. Let's see. I saw an ENTJ Empire, a debate thread about how you're not an ENTP. And a mod named Effulgence is asking people to make videos about how you're not an ENTP. I was curious. I don't. I know who Effulgence is. So Effulgence was an ESFP who believed herself to be an ENTP. And I had a 2-3 hour conversation in a typing session with her to explain that to her. And she didn't, I don't think she really cared to get that diagnosis from me. But she ended up being in the Discord for a time. She would cause some problems here and there, and eventually she left the Discord in a little bit of a bitter state, and so I imagine that she would not be super happy still. She was, like I said, very bitter and vengeful, most certainly. Which, if that wasn't enough of a reason to know that you're not an ENTP, then I'm not sure what could be. My goodness. Sorry about that. Once again, I have family that are over, grandfather, hospice. It's a thing. So I keep telling them that I'm streaming, but they don't pick up the message. Let's see here. Let's see. Hope I'm not mistyping people, but introverted sensing in boomers seems way more common than in younger gens. Like, I've typed most of my peers as SPs, but SJs are supposed to be the most common. That is what the Myers-Briggs frequency chart as a theme tells us, that a great percentage of the population is introverted sensing preferenced. But not everyone knows what that looks like. Introverted sensing preference people are what I had deemed them essentially normal people. They're not super weird or crazy. They do what everyone else is doing, and they just kind of live a normal life. Whereas extroverted sensors, they want to, instead of experiencing something and then retaining the information, they just want to experience that and move on to the next thing. Kind of looks like, some kind of form of, ADHD, for example. They're also typically a lot more talkative in conversation. They want to keep the conversation going, so they'll talk about this thing that they're interested in, and then they'll talk about the next thing that they're interested in to keep the last one that told me about it said they like to keep the vibe up. and so they need to. Yeah, that's more specific to ESFPs and then older ISFPs. Let's see. Harley, if you are back, apparently I've been missing
I am.
questions. So
I am. I am. I'm looking. What was the one you just answered?
let's see. I answered harmony. No, I answered that one, and then I answered Doza.
Harmony, can you please tell me what questions he has skipped, please? That would be helpful.
You weren't here.
I'm sorry.
Gotta love the typology community drama. I'm certainly not as interested in the typology community drama. I am simply here to give people relatable, practical MBTI information. That's what I'm here to do. If I can make a few bucks doing it, then great. Yes, I hope that their transition to the afterlife is as smooth as possible. But it's my grandfather, and he's currently on some dosage of morphine at the moment. Let's see. I have the noticed that ESTPs don't make choices for themselves. They ask their friends and do whatever they tell them to. That doesn't sound like ESTP behavior at all. uh, that sounds that in terms of cognitive function, if they're talking about the logic in something, if their whole friend group agrees with a certain line of logic, then we're talking about extroverted thinking.
Are you
So
talking about what are the strengths of an INFP in leadership?
I did answer that one. Uh, no, ESTPs don't just they might go along with something, but that someone else has an idea and they're just kind of they're along for the ride, then they can do that. But of course, if it's not something that interests them, they're going to get bored and then they're going to dip out. ESTPs don't do that. Let's see. The one after Doza was the question.
Yeah, I'm scrolling back up pretty far.
I don't see a question posted after Doza. I see one just before Doza, which was the ENTJ Empire, a debate thread. Yeah, I also wouldn't believe that there was a lot of ENTJs in a Discord channel called, or whatever the hell this is, an ENTJ Empire. Why are you wasting a bunch of time doing that when you could be constantly working and improving on your own success? Why would you be spending hours of your life in a public thread or a Discord talking about things? It's not lead extroverted thinking. But as I've said before, 90% of the community is mistyped. They have their own strange understanding of MBTI, which if they were to do that, then if we were to use your typical understandings of MBTI that you see across either YouTube or Reddit threads or other Discords, then what you would see is that 75% of the population would be some kind of an intuitive rather than some kind of sensor. It's bad news bears. Let's see. Does INTJ have autism, Asperger's? No, I don't think so. Let's see.
So all I see is Doza. I see Israel Project twice. And then I see Death Lady, Israel Project again, Death Lady, Immortal Emperor. And then you say that you're hoping that and I believe it's his grandfather, not his grandmother.
It's my grandfather, yes.
So yeah, I don't see.
Yeah, Harmony, I didn't see your other questions, but I'll keep an eye out for your questions if I can. Let's see. Can you do content on ENTP subtypes? I no. No. I will. If you would like subtypes, For personalities, Eric Thor was the whole reason that I started a YouTube channel at all, however many years ago it was, for the this whole subtype thing. Because why stop at having, let's say, 4 subtypes for personality? Everyone has their own extremely unique situation and life experiences. So why not just make a million different subtypes? Why not make a billion? I mean, goodness. No, subtypes. Yes, there are. Life is unique. Everyone's experience is going to be ever so slightly different. Sometime, in some cases, much more different, and it's going to influence how we might proceed with the tools that we have. But your cognitive function preferences will remain the same. You will still do your best to handle your current situation with the tools that you do have. So, none of that. Tercia says
Jessica
hi.
wants to
Hi,
know.
Tercia. What's up?
Jessica wants to know if you find some people harder to type than others, and why would that be?
Do you find some people harder to type than others? Why would that be? You know, it was trying to pick out introverted sensing people was probably one, and you would think that would be the easiest one. Uh, but for me, those people are they're the usual. That's normal. Those are the people that you've mostly known throughout your life, and so it just appears normal. So you end up trying to look for these other usages of cognitive functions, and so that can be a little bit tricky. And more importantly, I found that it's a little bit more tricky given when you go from culture to culture, when you go from community to community, that introverted sensing is going to change based on where they grew up. So what they enjoy, their interests, things that they're into, introverted sensing will absolutely. You take an introverted sensor in Central California, and then you go find one in like West Virginia. 2 completely different lives in what they do. Central California has a bit of a crime issue, for example. So an ISTJ, for example, that grows up there, well, they're used to dealing in drugs or doing drugs or robbing stores, getting into trouble with the police in general, home invasion, things like that. Whereas, let's say you go to West Virginia, where where it's more about community, where it's people working together and helping one another. And I personally experienced that in Missouri, that kind of community, and having barbecues with like the whole neighborhood block. Uh, 2 completely different lives, and yet picking that out as introverted sensing is it can be a bit of a challenge.
So, Death Lady, I'll go ahead and answer this one. Urchin doesn't really do socionics.
Mm-mm.
He does MBTI. So there's the answer to that.
I have found that uh, normally I wouldn't be interested in learning a typology. I am more confident in my own experience with dealing with people and all of the positives that came from my learning and understanding of people. I would rather trust what I know about people than I would trust a typology. And as I said earlier, the only reason that I got into MBTI at all was because I read the cognitive functions from the website and thought, I have seen these. This is very similar to how I grouped people growing up. And so, uh, as for getting into socionics, and this is not a slight against anyone, but I have found that sensor people in general prefer socionics for some reason. I don't know, and I'm not saying that I couldn't enjoy socionics. I'm just I'm not. MBTI was as far as I needed to go, and all realistically, all MBTI did for me was give me definitions to associate behaviors with, so that it was easier for me to categorize when I was understanding people.
Harmony says, I know a person that believes that they are an ENFP, but I think that they might be an ISFP. How can I tell the difference?
Well, there should be some fairly large differences between an ENFP and an ISFP. Let's see, the functions they have in common are introverted feeling and extroverted thinking. Let's see, an ENFP is, well, they lead with extroverted intuition. So let's say most of their childhood was them living in the clouds and not being here in real space. They live in imaginary worlds. They'll probably take a lot more time to be solitary. My brother, for example, he enjoyed, yeah, of course, he would try to engage with other people, but if there was trouble in the house between the parents, he would want to digest all the highs and lows of emotions going on in the house, and he would just sit in his bedroom spinning beads as a child, just wondering about that.
Well, an SE is going to be looking more for that sensory stimulation.
Well, an ISFP, they're wanting to engage with the real world. They want to go do things. They want to be touchy and feely and with their surroundings. They want, and even if it's someone who has a preference for introverted feeling, they still prefer practical solutions to problems, etc. They don't need to spend as much time wondering about what a solution can be because they have two eyes and they can see, well, if I do this and then I do that, then it might work. And so they handle things that way. An ENFP wants to ruminate on, especially when they're young, they're going to want to wonder about things more often than actually do them. But of course they have extroverted thinking in the third position, so they're going to eventually work on that, and they're going to want to take, get information from the area around, from the people around them, find what everyone agrees on, and then apply that information to life. So, so there should be some pretty big differences there. My dad ESFJ and mom ISFJ. I have judging function because my parents INTJ. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, that was more directed at Daimi ENFP. Oh. MBTI is how you deal with stress. No, that is not how I deal with stress. There is a fun beverage called alcohol in general that helps me with stress. MBTI has been one of the contributing factors of stress in my life over the past 10 years. And it's mostly due to people telling me things like extroverted feeling is caring about the feelings of other people. No. But understandably, and that's most of the community, though. They take the word extroverted and feeling, and to the best of their logical abilities, they slam the two words together, use the standard definitions for the words, and come to that logical interpretation. But of course, that is not what extroverted feeling means in MBTI. Let's see.
Joseph.
Doesn't really leave her house much. Nope. I'm skipping questions again.
So Joseph.
I'm just under Israel project.
Joseph asked, how is having FE in the fourth position different from not having it at all?
How is having extroverted feeling in the fourth different from not having FE in the stack at all? Well, once again, everyone uses all the functions every day. The question is to what degree. So what I've seen with the fourth function, imagine it as this tiny little voice, and it lives way back here somewhere. And when you're young, you can't really hear it at all. It may come to you once in a while. You may get a listen for it, but it doesn't really get any louder until you're much older. And of course, the maturity rates vary from person to person, but eventually it becomes you get used to listening to it. Eventually, at some point, You can hear it. You may not go along with it. You may not agree with it, but you can hear it a lot better. I hope that wasn't too strange to hear. Let's see, but more on that. What's the what if we're talking about what it looks like manifestation wise? When it's in the fourth position, it in the case let's take an ISTP for example. It looks like an attempt as they get older. They attempt to start being more sociable to get people to like them. That's something that often presents as. And when it comes to males, I have noticed that its development is different depending on whether or not they feel physically secure with themselves. More confident ISTP males, let's say, are 6'2", 180 pounds. They exercise a lot. They get a lot more positive attention from people, so they have more experience with doing that. Whereas the maybe not so physically secure males, maybe a little bit shorter, a little bit scrawnier, they don't get as much attention from people, and so that extroverted feeling doesn't get preferenced as much as they get older. That is something that I noticed.
Thank you, Ben. I fixed it.
But how it appears is that attempt to in quote get good at using extroverted feeling. They still are going to make mistakes. They're going to come off as awkward once in a while. It's they're going to be certainly a lot less concerned about whether or not what they say is going to fit within the group's dynamic. You need to select the gear and click all messages. I just have, okay, it says top chat. Got it. Okay, so now it's set to live chat. Thank you, Ven.
So Harmony asked, I'm not sure what type she's talking about, but she wants to know how types can be mistyped as an ENFP. Aren't ENFPs super dumb and more like hippies? And she's heard that INFPs are supposed to be smarter than ENFPs.
Okay, so where was that question?
Under when Israel posts, and after I said, please repost it.
So the last one I read was how is having extroverted feeling in the fourth different from not having it in the stack at all? And I didn't even finish that question. So not having it in the in quote stack at all, I have seen people with a strong preference for introverted feeling, let's say ISFPs and INFPs, they should, how I've seen it is that they still have somewhat of a preference for extroverted feeling. They're not as confident in using it, but it's still there. Most human beings have the ability to flex extroverted feeling. There are very few that haven't saw the need to use it. ENTJs, for example, not a super high concern. Now, I don't know where that question was. Okay, I see. It's scrolled up a little bit. How can those types mistype as ENFP? Aren't ENFPs super dumb and more like hippies? I've heard INFPs are supposed to be smarter than ENFPs. Well, I have a where do I start with this? I'm going to start with the whole smarter part because that stuck out the most for me. I have a definition for smart, and then I have a definition for intelligent. And so when it comes to, in quote, smart, most of the time when I've heard people use the phrase smart to describe another person, they're usually talking about how good their grades are, how much information they have accumulated from whatever books or whatever the teacher was saying. That's what they would say a smart person was. I don't equate that to intelligence. Intelligence, I define it as the ability to solve novel problems, kind of a thing. And in either case, I don't think that either type is inherently super dumb. So there's that. How can those types mistype as ENFP? Well, it's really easy. In the case of ISFPs, it's happened a lot. ISFPs, how they type on any random stupid online test will change on a day-to-day basis. That's not as much of an exaggeration as it sounds. How they're feeling that particular day will dictate the answers they give on that test. So if one day they're feeling like they're particularly extroverted intuitive, that's how they're going to answer. Then they're going to get that result. So the whole point of the test is to take your aggregate personality, or not personality, your aggregate behavior over the course of your life, and answer appropriately. Most human beings can't pull that off and be unbiased about it. Most people answer in the way that they'd like to believe they are rather than how they actually are. So that is how that happens. All right, where am I at? Let's see.
The next one was, we did that one.
I see one for...
Talking about an ISFP, Harmony says she doesn't really leave the ISFP that she knows. Doesn't really leave her house much, just work. But she doesn't sound like an ENFP. Do ISFPs leave their houses a lot?
It depends on why they need to leave the house. If you mean just leaving the confines of the walls of your house, of the building, then I've known ISFPs who go out into their backyard and garden, or they'll go outside to paint, or they will spend time on the porch and knit things, just looking at the world outside, things like that. Will they always stay in their house? If they have a reason to be in their house, then they'll be in their house. But if they have a reason to go outside, whether they feel like they want to go outside, maybe they want some fresh air, maybe they want to see you feel the sunlight on them, or just go out and see the greenery, maybe wave at a few people that drive by, then they'll leave their house. It's why we do what we do. We're looking for, motivations. So you'd have to ask her and find out. Yeah, ENFPs can stay inside if they can. So if you find an ENFP that has a remote work job and they don't know a lot of people in the area, or they're more interested in their own personal hobbies or their own personal interests, then if they don't have a reason to go outside, then they're not going to go outside.
Any advice for SE DOMs communicating with NI DOMs?
Let's see. SE DOMs communicating with... God, I hate all these buzz phrases like DOMs. Let's see. My advice for extroverted sensing dominant, or any advice for extroverted sensing dominant communicating with introverted intuitive dominant, I'm very conscious. That's good, that I could come off as too much to them and want to avoid making them uncomfortable. Well, the first piece, I guess the first piece of advice is to remember that introverted intuitives, whether it's first or second position, they are very busy people. They have their own personal ideas for how things need to be done, and it generally involves their life. So they're not going to want to spend a whole, especially when they're younger, let's say they're in their early 20s, going to college, trying to get their careers in order. They're not going to be spending a whole lot of time just communicating because they're busy. So there's that. Introverted intuitives enjoy talking about their personal accomplishments, things that they have done, the things that they're working on, their plans for the future. So if you need to have a conversation with them, ask them about what's going on in their life. They'll tell you about their future plans, what they were successful at, what they believe they're good at, and you can have that conversation. But they're of course far more interested in talking about themselves than other people. So.
Which types think that they are laid back but actually are not?
Which types think they're laid back but actually not?
Yeah.
So I guess it's a matter of opinion. It's more subjective as to what laid back is. So for, let's say, your typical INTJ, when they say, "Oh yeah, I was being lazy today," that meant they spent an extra 10 minutes in bed. And then we're just goofing around on, let's say, maybe TikTok, or they're checking a social media thing or something completely not helpful to their life. Yeah, I was lazy that day. So for me, being lazy is not cleaning your room or your desk, or going outside to taking the trash out, or not paying your bills, or just forgetting to pay your bills, or just choosing saying I'll do it later because I'm so busy playing a video game. That's what lazy looks like to me. But to someone who is far more conscientious than myself, being lazy, in quote lazy, is a lot has a lot lower of a threshold, I suppose. So in the case of laid back, what does it mean to be laid back exactly? Does it mean that they're always go with the flow kind of a thing? I would imagine that there's a number of ESTJs and ESFJs who believe that they are, in quote, more laid back, but comparatively to other people, they're not as laid back.
Um, do people actively choose to ignore their fourth function? And if so, aside from usage, what are the difference between the seventh and fourth?
Do people actively choose to ignore their fourth function? Yes. But once again, that level of ignore, it's they do it more often than not. It doesn't mean that they don't ever use it, or it pops up in their head and they go, no, go away. It's they would rather be doing something else. And so when you see human beings in general, if you give them the option to either do what's comfortable and that you've been doing a lot of most of your life, versus here's this other thing that you could do, you're not all that competent with it, but you can decide to go with it anyway, most human beings choose the former. And so in that, such is the case for whatever your fourth position function is. You know it's there, you know it talks at you, but you are much more comfortable and much more excited to use these other functions. So yes, typically speaking, they actively choose to ignore their functions. Aside from usage, what is the difference between seventh and fourth? Seventh is just further down on the list. But there was a theory that I have seen before where it wasn't so much this stack for functions, it was side by side. And so the idea was that let's take an ENTP, for example. You've got the usual stack. So you've got extroverted intuition, introverted thinking, extroverted feeling, introverted sensing. But then on the other side of this was introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, and then extroverted sensing. And the idea is that the further you get away from these other, these main functions, the other ones get even less energy consciously. They get less energy being used on them. And so the theory would be that a seventh position function is not used very often. In the case, so if I use myself as an example, introverted feeling, have I experienced feelings? Absolutely. I have experienced feelings before. Do I use introverted feeling to make any of my decisions? No. I will want to rationalize all of my positions before I make a decision. And then when it comes to the eighth position, which is extroverted sensing, I'm not stumbling through my house all day, not all day anyway. Yeah, I bumped my hip on something that they moved in the living room a number of times, but I'm not stumbling all over the house and tripping over myself. But when it comes to noticing my environment, I unfortunately don't pay as much attention to it, which is why my area looks the way that it does. There's been a pile of crap on my bed for the past 2 days now, and it's annoying to me that it is there because I'd like to actually sleep on a bed, but I don't notice it until it's time for me to go to sleep. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm too tired to deal with this now. I'll just, scoot it over to the side and lay next to it, kind of a thing. So the seventh position, it gets some energy, not as much as some of the other functions. And it's all contextual. So I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
If you are, not every problem you come across in life requires all of the functions. If you're solving the example I used before was if you put an INFP in front of a bomb and the bomb's going to go off in 5 minutes, what's the INFP going to do? Is the INFP going to try an introverted feeling the bomb to death and get it to diffuse itself? Obviously not. The INFP is going to try to use other functions to solve the problem. Um, so when it comes to introverted feeling, I don't know how many. Let's say there's supposed to be what would be a typically tragic moment in my life, and that typically people deal with these personally tragic moments by grieving. I don't want to grieve. I would rather distract myself with some other new idea, some new fantasy world I can enjoy, getting into some other single player story that has absolutely nothing to do with my life. I want to separate myself from my morals or values or how I feel about things. I want to separate myself from it, which, as I've been told, is not particularly healthy, but I'd rather not.
ENTJs are here. IQ test spoke. Thomas asked, how does inferior extroverted sensing manifest itself?
How does inferior extroverted sensing manifest? So, how I haven't met, understandably, I haven't met a super amount of introverted intuitives that were younger. Like I had my brother, that was, he's a couple years younger than me, and so how I noticed it from him was that we would, of course, I would try to drag him along to everything that I was doing, and when it came to extroverted sensing, he didn't really put a lot of stock in the world around him. That wasn't something he was terribly interested in. He would like to bury himself in some kind of informational books. When he was, shortly after he learned to read, he would enjoy National Geographic. I remember that being one thing. He'd like to read about the dinosaurs. He'd like to read about all of these things. To essentially accumulate knowledge, and he would kind of imagine what life would be like rather than wanting to necessarily explore it. But that of course all changed as he got older. And what I've seen in as they mature, having extroverted sensing in the fourth position, so that's INFJs and INTJs, is they focus on their physical fitness. That was a very normal thing. A focus on physical fitness, and of course they're always going to be more concerned with their studies and focusing on their future, absolutely. But when they're not needing to do that, when they just need to burn some time, they tend to exercise, especially the females. The females want to look thin typically and look fit, so they enjoy jogging, for example, and being on diets. Apparently, my mother is she's doing her best to age into the crypt keeper, and just refuses to put any weight on whatsoever. And she's about 56 now.
Dosa wants to know what an introverted intuitive looks like in the fourth position.
Let's try that again. What?
Dosa wants to know what NI in the fourth position looks like. How does it manifest itself?
Well, as it is the disdain function, it's not going to manifest a whole lot until later in life. But how I've seen it in the younger ones, in particular ESFPs, is they try not to throw any shade here, but ESFPs often come across as believing they were God's gift to man. I don't. Now that's in contrast to that of an ESTP. They they have accolades. They don't go around telling people how great they are at this or how they feel about that. That's not what they do. If they want people to believe that they're awesome, it's because they have these accolades. They're far more logical in how people should look at them, I guess. So and it's per the usual, as when they're very young, they think, oh, who cares about the future? We're living in the present. We're living here right now. Do this, think about that future stuff way later in life. So not
Um,
really caring about the future and just living in the moment. That's what it would look like to have introverted intuition in the fourth position.
and Harmony wants to know, how do you handle telling people that they're not the type that they are? For example, since we are talking about ENFPs, have you ever typed anyone recently that thought they were an ENFP and wasn't? What were the
Mm.
counterpoints that they gave?
I type a number of people throughout the weeks, whether it's people that come in for an official typing or someone asks me what's the personality type of this character, etc. So I don't recall the last time someone thought themselves an ENFP and they weren't. Um, there have been a couple of females in the past, at least the one that I can remember, who believed herself to be an ENFP and was not. But how do I go about telling people? It's usually never, well, not never, never, but it's typically not a pleasant experience when I'm talking to someone and then I tell them, okay, well, you're not this personality type. They want to know, they most of the time they want to know why. Other times they just, an example was typing a woman who believed her. I don't even know what personality type she believed she was, but I, of course, put her through all, my usual set of questions, and then after an hour had passed, I said, either I'm trying to determine, I need to ask a few more questions because I'm trying to determine whether you're an ISFP or an ESFP. Uh, and her response to that was, okay, yeah, I thought you were going to say that. I disagree. Bye. And that was it. I was, and then immediately hung up. Didn't really want an explanation for, because I was trying to explain, this is what I've got so far. I just need to ask a few more questions. But it doesn't, it doesn't always go well when you have someone who believes they understand the system, they believe they have enough experience with it, and then they are very absolutely certain that they are this personality type. They they have their own beliefs. They have their own, in quote, understanding of the system, and they oftentimes want to believe themselves to be some super rare snowflakey personality. And they're not. So
Um,
it's, I do my best. Some people have been far more receptive to it. I've had other people try to argue with me for 45 minutes about it. I give people 5 minutes. I have spent a great number of my years trying to explain things to people in such a simple enough manner that they should be able to understand it. And if after 5 minutes I haven't gotten through to you, start to brainy parts start to die, and I zone out. I'm like, okay, you do what you got to do. I'm gonna go do other stuff. I have lost interest in this conversation.
uh, when
Let's
was the
see.
last time that you experienced feelings that mattered? And how would you describe that feeling?
The girl. No, that's. Oh, there's some other questions here, is it not? Above that one, or they're not questions.
No, they're not questions, they're
Oh, okay,
statements.
got it. When was the last time you experienced feelings that mattered, and how would you describe the feeling? Gut wrenching. I When I experience personal feelings, I weird physiological changes. um, I'm sure most people are familiar with, like maybe like a trembling in the gut area when the adrenaline might be a little too high, or maybe I'm a little too excited about something that's potentially dangerous. And which, by the way, I consider feeling things for people. considerably dangerous. So if I'm talking to a girl that I really like, I start getting, the little bit of a knot in the stomach. I don't like that. I also don't enjoy the feeling I experience when I start to cry. It hurts, and then of course there's the chest pains and all that other stuff. I'd rather avoid it if possible. But yes, the last time I experienced feelings that mattered, I think the feelings matter somewhere in the brain. Logically speaking, I don't see much of a need. As a matter of fact, it probably hinders me to be in such a heightened emotional state. Or if you consider that a heightened emotional state, I understand that's kind of normal for most people. But for me, it's a lot. And that's what I was experiencing very, very recently. It's the knots in the stomach and maybe a little bit of a flushed feeling when speaking to a person.
Um,
So I hope I described that feeling. I know I tried to describe it in a more a physical sense. I just That's what came to mind. Let's
what
see.
does TE in the fourth position look like?
Timidness. Timidness, typically. Now, if we're talking about ISFP, well, of course, we'd have to be talking about them. ISFPs and INFPs, extroverted thinking in the fourth position, they are
Sorry.
oftentimes very, very timid. They're more often than not easily peer pressured into believing the logic of those that they personally like. So it often looks like timidness. However, once life has kicked them enough times, they become less timid. The extrovert thinking starts being used a little bit more as they get older. They start they become a bit more opinionated as they get older. They're less concerned with how with whether or not their logic is sound. They tend to focus more on how they feel about things. And so for example, your typical 40 plus year old ISFP often comes off as very opinionated. Oftentimes, not every time. Some ISFPs just go through life having a great time. They find someone young, they get married, they stay married, they're happy, everything's good. They're far less opinionated. But the ones that have had life kind of kick them over and over again, they get a little opinionated, especially after they drink. Well, that's normal. You spend most of your life not expressing how you feel to other people. Eventually, it's going to come back.
So I'll go ahead and answer this. Harmony, no, I am not Ven. I am Harley.
Correct.
Have you thought about writing a novel for the 16 personalities
A novel
corresponding
for
to
the
it?
16 personalities. I
Put it
have
to
thought of writing a novel, but it is a fantasy novel, so that I have been writing. So not about 16 personalities though. As fun as MBTI was, learning about it and traveling across the country to go meet all these people and you do all the experiments, see how they react based on the situation. That was fun for a fair amount of time, but it's it's kind of consumed my understanding when it comes to other human beings. So maybe if I were super old, if I live that long, maybe I will write something about the 16 personalities over the span of a lifetime. But until then, I would rather continue writing a fantasy novel. Let's see.
How unlikely would you say a 17-year-old is an ENTP if they go to the gym regularly? I'm pretty sure he's not an ENTP.
Pretty sure he's an ENTP.
Oh,
Pretty sure.
sorry. I can't read.
Well, uh, Some
So go for my
ENTPs, there was one particular ENTP I knew when he was, I met him when he was 17, but I had known him for some years after that. And he would tell me that he didn't mind doing some exercise. It certainly wasn't the meat of his day, but he was a little bit on the shorter side, and he was concerned about getting the attention of females, as most young men are. And he wanted to make sure that he looked physically fit. He said that yes, the guys that typically get more female attention in high school were ones that were a little bit more fit. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. And so he would try that, but he didn't stick with it. So he would do it for like, sporadically throughout the month. But then his mind would, of course, inevitably fall away from the physical, think more hypothetical, think more theories, things of that similar nature. And so sticking to physical routines is not something that an ENTP would do. So if you've recently met an ENTP who is, for at the moment, deciding he wants to do some exercising, he's going to get out of that eventually. I have been telling myself that I needed to start working out for the past 11 years. I try, I try to schedule it. You do it maybe in the morning, then maybe you do it before you go to sleep. That lasts for maybe a week, and then I'm back at my desk, not cleaning my room. Let's see. So,
So your next one is About Your Feelings by Harmony.
are you saying that the last feeling you experienced was like, no, wait, no, no, that's the one you're talking about, right? Are you saying the last feeling you experienced was liking a girl? I'm not sure if that is what you tried to describe. I'm saying that I don't focus enough on my personal feelings to know exactly what I'm feeling at all times of the day. Uh, I don't even go through the effort of trying to catalog it and say to myself, okay, remember when that happened and you were a little bit irritated? Remember that. Remember how you were irritated? Like, no, I'm not doing any of that. But I'm saying that the one that I remember most recently was this kind of excited, knots in the stomach, the usual stupid stuff.
Are you going to do another live typing?
I I have thought about doing another live typing, but it would need to be much more condensed than the first time I did it. I'm trying to remember, I think it was Gears that
You
we
love
had on
here.
here, uh, ESTP, and it was fun. I love talking to Gears, but it did stretch for a great deal of time, and not everyone wants to sit through a super long live typing session. So if we are going to do that again, it would need to be far more condensed.
Agreed.
Hmm.
Um, you can read Shattuck.
MBTI types as BBEGs. What's that? Harley, what's a
Oh, good, I wasn't the
BBEG?
only one. Don't ask me, ask him. Shattuck, what is that?
Let's see. I've been told that ESXPs. How do I differentiate between an ESTP with ESFP? I'm 16. So you could try going with the introverted feeling route, or you can try going with maybe the extroverted feeling route. So for an ESTP, depending on their age, so let's say you're talking to, was there a,
He's
sorry,
16.
okay, he's 16. Oh, he says, I've been told I'm an ESXP. Okay, so with ESTPs, they enjoy people. ESTPs, they want to be around people for a period of time. It's not going to be long or consistent, but they do want to practice getting people to like them. So ESTPs tend to want to have conversation with people. That's a back and forth. They say something to you, you say something to them, and having an actual conversation until, of course, the ESTP gets bored, then they wander off. ESFPs, on the other hand, talk, 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 talk. They don't care if it's a part of the conversation that you're interested in. They don't care if it was at all consistent with the subject. They want to talk, 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 talk. And as soon as the talking dies down, they will switch to another subject that they are more interested in. ESTPs, when they're having a conversation with someone, they want to have that back and forth. So they want to follow along with the conversation. They give you a turn and then they get a turn and so on and so forth. ESFPs want to dominate a conversation. They want to keep talking. That's I'm not sure how else to best describe that. ESFPs like to talk, 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 and then and ESFPs in particular talk about their personal feelings on things. What do they like about this? What do they hate about that? How do they look in these shoes? What kind of foods that they enjoy the most, and which one's good, which one's bad? They use a lot of subjective terms in conversation. Subjective terms, whereas in ESTP, unless it's appropriate for the conversation, they're going to try and stick to a more objective set of terminologies when describing things. So I hope that helps.
And Shattuck said, really good, bad, evil guy at the D&D boss.
A big, bad, evil guy. So who is the MBTI says big, bad, evil guys? Well, if people want to see it, then sure, that's something I'll do. The most difficult part was starting, doing this YouTube channel. I've been putting serious work into it only for the past year. Before that, it was 5 years ago or something, and I tried to do it, and life happened, couldn't really do it anymore. But then I had a moment this year to actually put some real effort into it. And so the most difficult part was picking out which types of videos to make that most people want to see. And so some people did enjoy the Dungeons and Dragons themed stuff, other people did not. But
he reads what you say. We're trying to make sure we don't miss questions in the middle of
yes, I'm trying to
the chit chat.
Do that. Usually, most of the streams are a list of questions that need to be answered. And so, do my best to focus on that. Let's see here. Oh, Zane. Let's try to be a little more diplomatic, if we can. Adele said ESTP. Ven said ESFP. I disagree with them both entirely. I've been told ISTP and ISFP as well. Well, I don't type people under the age of 18 anymore for some reasons. So if you turn 18, then we can set something up if you would like, if that's something that interests you. Let's see. Is ADHD in ENPs inevitable? Do you have it? They tried to diagnose me with that when I was very, very young, and they wanted me to take pills. I didn't want to take pills, so my mother, on the other hand, was very much against this idea that I had ADD or ADHD, and she simply said he needed more discipline. She went a bit more of an aggressive route with the discipline. So they tried to, they diagnosed me with it. They wanted to get me on pills, and I didn't want to. And my mother simply told them I'm just too lazy and I need to be disciplined.
And to, go off of that, I don't think it's just, I think it's more any that kind of faces that problem. Because I wasn't doing schoolwork because I didn't find it interesting.
Uh,
They tried to diagnose me with it as well.
uh,
And can you not hear me?
yes.
All right. They tried to diagnose me with it as well, but they found out I'm very capable of focusing on stuff when I want to. Just I didn't care about schoolwork.
See, there's that. I've also met back in high school a number. There were a few uh, extroverted people that I can try to think back to now and think, oh yeah, they were more extroverted sensing than introverted sensing, who also claimed to have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. I think that both both of those are overdiagnosed in society, and but I would think that it's just an attention deficit disorder. There's a lot of things that can pull your attention. So if you are someone that's more preference to extroverted sensing, sitting in a classroom at a desk reading or listening to the teacher may not all be all that exciting for you, so not going to be interested. Therefore, your attention goes elsewhere. Same with any kind of extroverted intuitive. If you are, instead of listening to the teacher or reading what's in the book, you're just daydreaming about whatever fantasy world you want to come up with in class, then they're going to say that you have attention deficit disorder as well. So I don't necessarily think it's inevitable. I just think that it's overdiagnosed. Let's see. I've been in your server before. Yes, Zane, I do vaguely remember. I do vaguely remember you in the server. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, there's that. Maybe more in common, but never always. Zane does not think he fits stereotypes of ESTPs. Well, see, there might be an issue there, is that not all the stereotypes are correct. Some of them have merit, but not all of them. Don't go off of stereotypes. Look for that preferenced cognitive function use.
Correct.
I would say look at the functions and try to be as objective as possible on what you truly do. And that's what they said, on the website. They said that it's really up to each person to know for certain what cognitive functions that they are preferencing. But of course, there are traits, attributes, there are behaviors in cognitive function preference that you can notice in people. And that's what I try to bring to you. Theodora says, I'm an ISFP. My boyfriend is an ENTP. Can you give me some advice to make him feel more comfortable?
Stop asking him to talk about his feelings.
Something to ask me to talk about my feelings. The only thing I can remember is all the mistakes that I made in a relationship with an ISFP. Don't bore him. It's not something that the boredom is not something that the ENTP can just turn off in a relationship. You have to make things interesting to him. Find out what is interesting him. Stalk his Facebook or break into his search history. I mean, do something to keep his interest. Otherwise, bye-bye, birdie. And don't worry, he'll do all the work of ruining that relationship. You don't have to do anything. But if you want to keep him around, then you need to, you gotta be interesting. You've got to keep it all lively in the relationship. Do something unexpected. Give him a puzzle to solve. You decided to just up and do something different one day. He'll pay attention. He'll notice that's an anomaly. That's something he's gonna want to pay attention to.
All right. So I think the
see.
questions have calmed down a bit.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Archie,
Is
would
it
you like to
time?
know what the surprise is?
Yeah, I'm ready for the surprise. Let's. It's been almost 2 hours into the stream. What's the surprise?
Hopefully, hopefully everybody in the stream enjoys this. But I bought a book the other
What?
day. I bought a book.
Okay.
And you say that you're very open with your audience, right?
No. No. No.
Don't you want to answer some questions?
Answer some questions
Yes.
about something I wrote.
No, about you. Are you ready?
Okay. I will see what I can do.
So, just so everybody knows, the book that I bought was 1,000 of the most important questions you will ever ask yourself. And I thought this would be very entertaining to ask Urchin some of these questions. So, Urchin, if you woke up tomorrow and your deepest dreams were fulfilled, what would that look like?
If I woke up tomorrow and my deepest dreams were fulfilled,
Yes.
I don't know what my deepest dreams are.
In that case, do you know what you really want?
I could think about things that might help me in my current situation and how my life could be different from my current situation. That would be something. I don't know. It's a deepest dream. I want to. I want to be. I want to know what it looks like inside of a black hole, like at the center. I want to see what that looks like. We were watching that. Ven and I were watching that video on something about infinity, and of course, it inevitably gets to the black hole, and then towards the center of it, it's this infinite curvature of space and time and all this whatever. And the image that they were showing was that essentially you would be seeing yourself from behind, like over and over and over again. And I'm a little bit curious if that's actually the case. So that would be, a kind of a deep desire, to see that. Having a lot of money, sure, that's pretty standard. I would love to have a lot of money. There's a lot of things I could do with that money, but there's that. Having a woman in my life that understands me, that would be superb. Obviously, uh, it would probably end up looking like some kind of weird fantasy world where magic exists. That would probably what it might look like. Something weird, wild monsters to go out and slay. Get it, like a what do you call it? Isekai anime, kind of like that. That would be pretty neat. I don't think those are my deepest desires, though. I'd have to actually stop and think about what those are.
Fair enough. And what characteristics do you use when approaching a major challenge?
Say that again.
What characteristics do you use when approaching a major challenge?
A major challenge, like getting out of bed. Um, let's try that. Yeah, why not? That's subjective. What a major challenge is. So getting out of bed, I have to think about the possibilities of what could have happened on my computer overnight. So it's typically I'm looking for maybe a message, maybe there was an update to a game, uh, maybe some news article pops up, or I go to 4chan and see what dumb news I can read about that particular morning, assuming that I woke up in the morning. So I try to engage extroverted intuition to excite me into getting out of bed. And if it
How
doesn't
many
work,
books do you
if I'm
have
just if I'm not interested, just lay in bed for a while longer.
list? Well, given the fact that these questions actually can show some cognitive functions, it kind of fits. Like, for example, Do you feel like you have to behave a certain way to make other people like you?
Yes.
And what cognitive function would that be?
Extroverted feeling.
So there's your answer to that question.
Wait, someone asked that question?
Yeah, they asked, couldn't this be done in a private call? Aren't we here to talk about MBTI? These questions do show cognitive function.
Oh. Oh, I see. I got it now. Took me a minute to
Although
find it.
I am actually curious. Um, what do you think each type's biggest fear is?
I don't know if I would use MBTI to determine someone's biggest fear. I could guess at what a fear of theirs would be. So, introverted, intuitive, preferenced people's a first, second position. Failure, understandably. Having their ideas and plans not work and just crumble, fall to pieces. That's got to be a big one. It may not be that maybe they're just really afraid of clowns, but another fear most certainly would be their plans failing. That's that's got to be something up there for sure. As an example, extroverted, sensing, preferenced people. So once again, first and second position. Big fear not being able to experience the physical world anymore, possibly going blind, losing their losing one of the five senses, maybe going blind. That would suck, obviously, for them. Losing their sense of touch. You know, if they enjoy textile things or the feel of another human being, that's gone. Just a numbness for the rest of your life. Losing taste. I know that I have known many ESFPs and ISFPs that would be mortified if they lost their ability to taste things. So I would think that whatever your more dominant functions are, and then losing that ability to experience it or fully truly experience it, that would be something to be absolutely concerned about. Me being kicked in the head by a mule and then being left retarded for the remainder of my years, just end me. It is not just end me. To get the, what was that thing in that No Country for Old Men? Just get the thing, the air compressor, and just end it.
So Angel asked, what is your purpose in life and how do you feel about it?
What is your purpose in life and how do you feel about it? I don't know what my purpose in life is. In the absence of an all-powerful God that determines what it is that we're supposed to be doing, I guess we would give ourselves purpose. And if I were to be as I do my best to be as unbiased and objective as possible in regards to my whole life and what I usually do, I am an observer. I would say that maybe my purpose is to observe. I don't really want to include myself inherently as a part of humanity. I'm just here to watch. Here to watch. So you got to do whatever it takes to survive. Make sure you wake up the next day so that you can keep seeing all the silly things everybody does. And then point out like a vulture when something terrible happens. Like, aha, you did that thing. You know that was a bad idea, but you did it anyway. And now you're, hurting over it. I observe. I observe. Do my best to find ways to make life more enjoyable.
And could someone's type change after having some kind of mental illness?
Well, I don't know about necessarily a mental illness. As someone, I have not gotten a chance to talk to someone who has a split personality disorder, but that would be fascinating, right? That would be absolutely something to see, just to study for certain. I imagine that my thoughts on a split personality disorder would be that it wouldn't be some massively drastic change. I think that they would have their usual personality with all the preferences for cognitive functions, but then perhaps the split personality would have the same functions, but perhaps maybe in a little bit of a different order. They would still have more experience using some functions over the other. And so I wonder how much of a change in personality, or at the very least cognitive function use, would be. But I know that if you get physical damage to the brain, whether it's doing too many drugs, or you get kicked in the head by a donkey, or you get into a car accident, skateboard accident, something in that range, and you deal damage to the brain, your personality could very likely change. Or in MBTI terms, that is like just a change in cognitive function use. What if one day all of a sudden you no longer cared about your future goals and plans, and then you just kind of cared about what was going on in front of you? So yeah, then you would spend the rest of your life not ever having a strong preference for introverted intuition ever again.
And what am I typing?
Oh goodness, it is warm in here.
Sorry.
Let's
What is the difference between SE and
oh,
NE boredom?
1 second. Harmony says that I need to start asking people to share, like, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And yes, I usually have Ven for that. Ven is not here at the moment. But yes, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, join the Discord if you have any other questions you think about later. As long as you at me in the Discord, I can usually see it and then answer it. Let's see.
Next
The
one is SE and NE.
the next one is what?
What is the difference between SE boredom and NE boredom?
Oh, extroverted sensing when they get. I'm thinking of more more mature people in that position. So I have some like my cousin being an ESTP. When he gets bored, he moves, like he vacates an area, whether that be in cyberspace or in real life. When he's bored, he moves. He leaves. He's looking to do something else. But when someone with extroverted intuition is bored, they don't have to go anywhere. Their physical body doesn't have to go anywhere. They just need to start daydreaming. Now, the glazed over look in the eye, and then just doing the same basic motions. And it's because they're somewhere else. So, but for an extroverted sensor, they'll say, they'll wait for a break in the conversation and say, okay, well, it's time for me to go. You have a good day. Maybe I'll catch you next time. Bye. And then they physically go away more often than not. Or if they're in a Discord call, sometimes they'll just up and leave without saying anything. So.
Next question is was my school subjects and functions questions answered?
Was my school subjects and functions question answered?
Don't think I saw a question that had to do with that.
I don't know. Something about school subjects and functions questions answered.
Then you're going to have to repeat that one. Harmony wants you to also tell us what you would do if you had money and to go over that list.
And also to tell us what he would do if he had money. If I had money?
Mm-hmm.
How much money? If I had $5, I'd go down and get a 4-pack of something.
Let's do $2 million. What would you do with $2 million?
$2 million. I would probably. It's $2 million. Can't. I have some family members that could really use a house, and there are people that I've known for, understandably, 36 some odd years. So, I'd probably, with my grandparents on their way out, I would probably get my father a respectable house someplace, somewhere. I'd do that. There's some people I'd like to meet with that money, so I would go and meet some of those people. I would take my 1995 Saturn SL and I would go get it completely tuned up for sure. I enjoy my vehicle. It's loud. It doesn't have and nothing in it is really automatic. It's a manual transmission on top of that. But if I could spend a ridiculous amount of money to get a new engine block or maybe modernize a few things, then I would totally do that for sure. And as for the rest of the money, I would like to think that I'd invested in something important so that it could benefit me in the future. What would most likely happen is at some several months of a more luxurious lifestyle, I would think, in terms of, oh, I'm not going to be cooking food, I'm going to be ordering food. I'm going to maybe actually buy some actual like new clothes. That would probably be something. I'm wearing the same clothes I have had for the past 6, 7 years. So maybe get some new clothes. A new computer. I don't know why that wasn't the first thing on my list of things to do. Need a brand new everything here for sure. But it's just $2 million, so I would use that. I would want to use most of that money to cruise along while trying to start up my other projects and make money doing something more entertainment related, like more YouTube or OnlyFans. Who knows?
So, BE, I would imagine being two MBI types. What two MBI types are we talking about here? I'm actually talking about getting diagnosed by psychosis.
Getting getting diagnosis by psychosis. Do you mean by a you're getting diagnosed by a psychologist? Is that what you meant? Let's see. An ENFP to an ENTP is a possible change, I guess. I wouldn't. I don't. I think it's possible for many personality types to try to consciously focus more on other functions, but just like with anything else in life, the more you do something that you are disinterested in, the quickly it tires you out. The more quickly it tires you out. So I can try to just take life as how it is. Like, let's say I wanted to really boost that extroverted sensing and I want to just pay more attention, start noticing my area, start cleaning things up, putting it in ways that are more organized so that I can move more easily around the room. Make sure that I fold all of my clothes or put them in nice organized spaces. I could do that, but after about 2 minutes, I'm going to start thinking about something else I'd rather be doing and then say, oh, I had a moment where I want to see about this. And then I'll sit my ass back down on the computer and then not clean anything for the rest of the day. So.
I do believe that Zane's question was asked or answered. He asked, do certain subjects in school cater towards functions? I believe we did touch up on that when you were talking about math.
Talking about the maths. Where was that question?
Way, way up. Hold on, I'll find it. Well, I won't because it won't let me go up any further.
Sad.
All right, well, then just answer it again.
I do apologize. Do certain school subjects cater towards a function? Introverted sensing. That is what it caters towards. The majority of people in the country, in the United States at least, I can't speak for any of the other countries, but in the United States, they have a very simple philosophy on teaching students. Repetition, repetition, repetition. So that's super good for introverted sensing. It's really good. Do the same stuff over and over and over again. Make sure it's burned into your memory. So understandably, the school system is catered towards introverted sensing, which now, according to the frequency chart, which when I first saw it on the Myers-Briggs website was already 10 years old, it says that having introverted sensing in the first or second position is about 47% of the United States population. So it works for roughly half naturally. And then, of course, for extroverted sensors, they may have a little bit more of a preference for introverted sensing. They might take them a little bit longer to remember things, but there's that. And then, of course, in some other personalities, INTPs and INFPs, they may end up having an easier time with it. Michael, my INTP friend, he didn't have that big of an issue in school that I remember, but I met him in an art class, so that was more about just creative expression than memorizing anything.
I also didn't struggle in school. I didn't struggle, I just didn't do the work.
Didn't struggle, just didn't do the work. You do good on the test. Now, I grew up in Central California, and so it didn't matter if I did good on the test or not, more often than not, anyways. It was the amount of homework. Homework was more important than the actual test. So I had come to the conclusion that, well, they don't really care if the kids are learning anything because they could do all the homework, still pass with like a C, maybe a B, but bomb all of the tests, in class. So they didn't really care if the kids were learning anything. They cared about obedience. Do as you're told. That's what they cared about. And I am not the most obedient human being on the planet, so... Anarchy Raccoon says, I bet you can make a lot of money selling feet pics. Thank you. That's Michael, by the way. That's my INTP friend. Let's see. Bob is trying to get me to do feet pics. My feet are not pretty, so we'll see. Would it be safe to say that giving $2 million to an ENTP to manage on their own is not the smartest thing to do? It certainly isn't. I would surely blow that money immediately. I need someone to manage things for me. Yes, if I was much, much younger and I had $2 million, I would have probably lost it at 19, maybe 20. Now, granted, I'm not 18, 20 years old anymore, so I have some more condensed ways of living my life. So I have a car that's good on gas, and I've had it for over 12 years now. I think fiscally speaking, it would be better for me to simply buy a house outright somewhere where, being more vaguely responsible as an adult, and you make sure you move into a nice area with low crime and make sure you've got a car that's good for you and it works, it's reliable. But when I was 18, 20 years old, it would have been alcohol, drugs, women. Then it would have been gone. Because back then, the only thing I cared about was a more nomad lifestyle. I did not want to stay in one place for too very long. There was actually a point between, I think it was 21 and 23, where I had a home and I was almost never there. I was meeting new people all the time, and I wanted to stay at their house. And so, yeah. Wouldn't have cared about having a consistent long-term investment for a place to live. Let's see. Someone having financial control over you sounds dangerous to me. It could be dangerous. I don't. It would be nice to have financial advice that I can safely ignore, but for someone to have complete control over my finances is not something that I appreciate. Money is the root of all evil. Just become communist? Well, communism looks super good on paper. I play Empyrean on occasion with my friends and family, and it's maybe 5, 6 of us playing Empyrean. It's a spaceship builder, base builder game, whatever. So you go out and collect resources. When it's just the 5 people together, everyone just goes out, collects resources, and then when someone gets the idea to build something, they just go ahead and build it. No big deal. We have this community pot that we share from. It's that when your communism grows too large, and then you have one too many people that don't want to work, and all they want to do is consume. So now you're going to need to make up for all the people that are wanting to just consume. So if you've got 5 people, 4 of them are out working, and there's one person is sparingly using whatever materials were collected, not really going to notice anything, not a big deal. Now, if you've got 5 people, if you've got 10 people, and half of them only want to build, and the other half are the only ones that want to gather resources, you're going to run out of resources given the speed at which they're trying to build stuff, and then everyone's kind of screwed. So let's see. There are some people on OnlyFans who make over $1 million a month. What would you do with that consistent type of money? $1 million a month?
Yeah, it's a thing.
No, I like what do I do with $1 million a month? Like, okay, I've got a house, I've got a fancy computer, maybe I can afford to, maybe it's a big enough house and I'll have a bunch of my friends or people I like and have them move into the house, and so I could make sure that everyone's eating and everyone's able to take showers and have all their clothes washed and make sure that someone's coming by to do the dishes or something. But I'm more interested in human interaction than I am with material possessions. So uh, I guess I would just handle it on a case by case basis. Okay, I'm making $1 million a month. I've got a house. I've got people nearby that I like. We do whatever seems interesting to for the group, and then if something else comes up, I can dump money on it. But I don't have some big fancy plans for my future. I think my plans are at best reasonable. Let's see. Where was that question I just, okay, it was up there. I have friends that I would trust with financial control. I wouldn't be worried about it. Well, that's good. I would always be worried. Let's see. Do you guys not have anyone that you could trust? I have some people. The thing about trust, to trust someone in their entirety. You're trusting, if you say, I trust this person, what you are implying is that no matter what this person does, you can trust them. You can trust for whatever the reason is. I mean, you could trust them. I trust certain people with certain things. I do not typically trust an entire human being. So you can trust an introverted sensor to, if they like you at least, or you've come to an agreement, you can trust them to maybe remember things for you, as an example. I'm trying to keep this as MBTI related as possible. I could trust let's say an extroverted sensor, let's take an ESTP, for example, around my age. I would trust that they would probably know what the most A to B solution is to my problem. Could probably trust that. Or at least it would be good enough. It may not be the absolute most, but it would seem a lot better than what I could pull off. But to trust someone in their entirety is insane. Don't do that. Anyways, moving on. 35, child community around me, so I have all dire situations. Let's see. It's good that you had a decent childhood, Harmony. I didn't. All right, let's see. And now it's turning into we're talking about forms of government all of a sudden in the chat. Let's see. Who would move into your house if that happened? Oh, well. I guess one of the most of the people that I know that are in my friend circle now, they have families and they've got their own things going on. So I would find all the people that I have in my social circle that don't have that stuff yet, and I would ask them if you would like to move in. And everything would be taken care of for, they're taken care of. They have all the money. There's no shortage of food. There are multiple refrigerators, multiple kitchens. It would be some kind of ridiculous 3-4 story house, and you can just live there, and then I can go bother you whenever I want. So I would pick out the people that don't have familial obligations and then bring them back to the house. Let's see.
Um,
Where are we at
which
now?
types do better or worse with absolute freedom?
Which types are worse with absolute freedom? Like, you
Better
mean
or worse?
complete? Well, as far as I know, you are free to do anything that you want. You just still have to abide by the rules of reality. So, as far as I know, but if you mean to say that you can do whatever you want with no consequences, what was the worst? Definitely don't let an ENTP do that.
What about the best?
The what?
Which type would do the better or worse at absolute freedom?
Would do better with absolute freedom?
Yeah.
There's so many factors involved here. I couldn't tell you exactly at the moment which one would be better or which one would do it worse. It's I know if you let an ENTP do whatever they want with no consequences, something's going to explode, right? I imagine that the same could be said for, let's say, INTPs. People that are more interested in knowing the truth rather than whether or not it's going to affect other people. Definitely don't do that. Because when I'm thinking they can do whatever they want with absolute freedom and there's zero consequences, we're talking. My first thought. So, and now granted, this might have been a little too abstract here, but jumping off of a building and not falling to your death. There's no consequences there. So if there's no consequences, maybe instead you fly. Just the same. Maybe you can all of a sudden travel faster than light. Maybe the ENTP, INTP believes that there is a solar system out there that seems way better for the Earth to be in. And so they were able to magically teleport the planet to another solar system. But, oops, supernova or something. There was a massive coronal ejection, and then it fried the planet. It's definitely don't. I mean, ENTJs, for example, what do they want? Like total human domination. Okay, well, you know, that's doesn't. Most people would say that's probably not good. ENFJs would want everyone to love them without, what's that? What's the unconditional? That's the word. They would want everyone to love them unconditionally. INFJs would want to do good for people, make sure that everyone's taken care of. So I mean, that one seems pretty okay. INFPs would want the world to be in this more abstract, do what feels right to you kind of a thing. That doesn't, maybe that's not so bad. But I don't know if I could tell you which one was better or worse. Let's see. Where are we at?
Ruti.
Reti.
Yeah, it's Ruti.
I'm reading. What's your thoughts on an ENTP with ISFJ mom? Is it going to have more advantages or more disadvantages? So I was recently talking with someone about whether or not it would be better to be in a relationship with someone who is virtually the same as you. Like imagine you dating your same personality type. Or would it be, in quote, better to be in a relationship with someone who had a bit of a different wheelhouse when it comes to handling reality? So if I try to think of it objectively, you would think that, well, if you were going to be in a relationship and to get the most benefit out of it, it might be best to go with someone who handles things differently from you. They'll see it from a different perspective. They, in the case of, let's say, the ISFJ, they would want to be more grounded. They would want to be more schedule oriented, want to make sure that everyone's taken care of, make sure that the day-to-day stuff is processed and everything is going as it should be, just as it did the day before and the day before that and the day before that. So is that good? On this more objective, picking more positives than negatives approach, that's quite plausible. However, is the ENTP going to be satisfied in that relationship? The ISFJ, most of the time, what the ISFJ cares about is that you are being a good partner. So typically an ISFJ cares if you are, if it's a female ISFJ who grew up in a relatively, what we might consider a traditional kind of household, you need to be making money, spending time with the kids, going out to dinner on whatever scheduled time that she decides. And as long as you're doing those things, she will do what she believes she's supposed to do. So that's cool. So if you're an ENTP and you're doing that, super great. On your end, though, as an ENTP, how happy are you going to be with a super structured, very routine, scheduled, consistent human being who's not going to want to surprise you with anything, is more interested in keeping things consistent and making sure that it was the same as it was the day before, because that's the most important. And how happy are you going to be with them? I guess that's the question. And so is it better? I couldn't say that one would be better than the other. It's just that there's going to be some different positives, some different negatives in those things. Things to consider, because of course the ENTP getting bored in a relationship will end the relationship. That's guaranteed. So
That the ISFJ is the mom.
well, then everything I said in the example, that's what I would go with. Now, if it's an older, maybe a more mature ENTP, some coping mechanisms I have found with, when being in a relationship with someone that doesn't necessarily share your interests or will be able to have a back and forth conversation about whatever it is that you wish to discuss. Do whatever you can do to make them as content as possible, so long as it doesn't take too much time out of your life, but make sure that you've got friends and family that you can converse with about these things. Do your best to distract yourself from knowing that you are in a very boring relationship. Do your best, and if you can pull that off, then that could theoretically work.
Okay, but the question was a ENTP child who has an ISFJ mother.
Oh, I kept thinking wife for some reason. ENTP with an ISFJ mom, probably give you hell. Not hell, not like with my mom, but they would want to make sure that you are following as much routine as possible. Sorry, it's hot.
What are the top? What are the top 5 personalities that you would be if you weren't an ENTP?
ESTP. Now, assuming that I'm more or less physically the same, INTJ, ENTJ. I'm thinking of personality types that do, and then either INFJ or ENFJ. I'd rather
And
be.
why?
They handle reality better than I do, so they may not live as much of an abstract life as I do. But if I was one of those personality types, I wouldn't really care all that much. What I would care about is dealing with reality and where I fit in that reality. So it would make things quite a bit simpler for me.
I'm assuming Harmony is asking back about the question with money. So who are these people? Do you have many? I want to know why you would choose them and how you expect the dynamics to work with all of those MBTI types together.
Who are these people? Do you have many? I want to know why you would choose them and how you expect the dynamic to work with all those MBTI types together. These are some stalkerish questions, which isn't bad. I oftentimes think of when someone's stalking me, it's kind of endearing. It means they're really interested in you, right? So that's just from a more male perspective. But so who are these people? I can think of. I don't want to give out names, but I would say that there's an ENFP that would probably love a new place to live. An ESTP that would be totally fine with moving anywhere away from family. A couple of INFPs, although in one particular case, I think she would say no because she's a little bit more on the family-oriented side. Another ENTP that is always down for whatever. Uh, and I think most of the other people I know already have their own homes or their own houses, families, etc. So yeah, that.
Um,
Oh,
let me
and
go on
how would
and
I expect the
look.
dynamic to work with all those MBTI types together? Uh, Real quick, most of the people I described tend to stick to themselves or do their own thing. So it just means that once in a while I could go bother them and see how they're doing, or I can send them messages through Discord while we're still living in the house. And, hey, you want to play this? Hey, do you want to do that? And so on and so forth. If if it interested me to do so. But I do my best to keep the people I like around me as much as possible. I've been told that I have some strange, what do they call it, attachment styles. I've had a couple of ladies lately talk to me about attachment styles, and apparently I'm weird. So, which is it's always a nice thing to hear.
You are weird, but um, what are some obvious signs to tell ISTPs and ENTPs apart? Being stuck between those two types for a while, and I'm more interested in mastering skills the way an ISTP would, but I can ramble on about anything.
There's some obvious signs to tell an ISTP and an ENTP apart. So, if depending on their age, we're looking for how much are they setting up for their future. I think that might be a really. There's some other ones. I don't know if I can discuss them necessarily on YouTube, but let me try that one first. ENTPs have a strong preference for manipulating people, getting to know new people, getting them to do things for them, etc. So an ENTP is far more group oriented when accomplishing things. They, if it's at all possible, they want to delegate responsibilities to these other people that they have. What's that thing? Glamored, glamored. It's a vampire thing. You know, to put them under the spell of getting them to do stuff. That is something that an ENTP enjoys doing. However, an ISTP wants to get things done themselves. They oftentimes don't believe that there is anyone nearby competent enough to help them with their plans, their goals for the future. ISTPs are more future oriented, ENTPs not as much. So, and now once again, it's not to say that ISTPs cannot use extroverted intuition at all. That would be ridiculous. Everyone uses every function every day. So an ISTP can absolutely talk about more just impractical, uh, unproductive forms of conversation. I have known many ISTPs as of late that like to talk about politics and how they essentially see this objective reality and other people are ignoring it. That's usually their complaint. So we can talk about these more abstract possibilities in how people do things. I've had conversation with them before. Now it's not all day, mind you. Eventually, after an hour, 2 hours, I'm throwing too many possibilities out there. They start getting a little worn down and they want to quit. But the point that I'm making is that everyone uses all the functions every day, and so it's not impossible for an ISTP to want to engage in more extroverted, intuitive related topics. They just may not want to do it all that often. In the case of an ENTP, their room is going to be a mess unless they have a maid in the house. As you can see, my room is not exactly put together at all for that. That's not to say that ISTPs can't have messes, but they pick it up eventually. They don't. They may have a stack of beer cans, this high somewhere on maybe the side of their desk. They'll get around to it eventually. But with ENTPs, of course, they're so busy being in their head, not paying attention to what's actually going on around them, that things tend to pile up. They'll let garbage sit for a while, or forget about it altogether, maybe get it out of their line of sight just because they needed to move it to put something else there. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, there was a plate that you left behind your monitor that's starting to stink. It's that kind of this difference in standard of living in regards to their physical surroundings. So ISTPs focus on their future, what's practical, what's going to work, and that's going to make up the aggregate proportion of their life. ENTPs care more about just learning something new, something that they can wanting to understand things, and it absolutely does not need to have a practical use whatsoever. In many cases, ENTPs spend too much time on impractical use stuff, and then the rest of their life languishes.
I thought Ribbling came from NE. What MBTI is most likely to have OCD?
What?
What MBTI is most likely to have OCD?
Obsessive compulsive disorder. Making sure that, I guess it would depend about what. So most of the time that I did see OCD is wanting to, it's repetition. They need to do a very specific thing at generally a very specific time. Things need to be in a specific way. It needs to be congruent with how it was before. So it would seem to me, and now granted, this is just from an MBTI math standpoint, that introverted sensing would be the cause of that more obsessive compulsive disorder behaviors. But I don't necessarily believe that you need to be a strong preference to introverted sensor to have those tendencies about very specific things. I think that could just be how your brain's wired. It could be trauma related. Could be anything. Not 100% on that. But if I had to guess, I would say in more instances you will find OCD behavior in someone with a preference for introverted sensing.
Next question is, Harmony says they're not stalking. They just want to know the dynamics between the two. Why would you enjoy them being around, and how could they enjoy being around each other?
Why would I enjoy them around? And you were talking about the people in my hypothetical house with my $2 million?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about? They all of them would break. So I mean, there would just be the ones that immediately came to mind were the four, and then the other people that come to mind, they have their own stuff, they have their own house, all that stuff. So I'm just taking these people that don't have their own stuff and then bringing them to me. So my ESTP cousin, super chill, likes alcohol. We'd have a great time. ENTP, super chill, loves alcohol, get along all the time. But of course, from different perspectives. So with the ENTP, I can talk about some very, of course, understandably abstract topics, things that have no actual meaning, any tangible meaning in our lives. But those are the things that I enjoy talking about. It's the hypotheticals, the theorizing, wondering about people's motivations with as little data as possible, and then making these, trying to make conclusions based off of what little evidence we have. So those are the things that I really enjoy, these kinds of abstract puzzles. But in the case of the ESTP, he is, of course, more down to earth, and that's a different perspective from mine. And although we may not always spend a whole lot of time together, I know that I can go to him at any point and just have someone to talk to and have a drink. Or maybe he'll want to play a type of game. He's a really cool guy, so I like staying with him, hanging out with him. The ENFP, she is a big help in my life, certainly, as of current. Big help. And she, of course, being an ENFP, can still absolutely talk about abstract topics. Once in a while, in terms of a more objective use, maybe once in a while she can help me talk about my feelings now that I'm getting older in age, and maybe I don't want my suppressed emotions to turn into some new form of cancer. that kills me. So, that would be something to do. I enjoy having her around as well. She is far more concerned with my well-being than I am. So super helpful. And then for the INFP, well, the INFP would, I was thinking it was Kiwi because she drinks a lot and says some really funny things. Now, I was going to also invite Cookie Dough, but Cookie Dough is much more family oriented, and I don't think that she would want to be in the house. And I would just have her there because she's just the sweetest thing that anyone's ever met ever.
Uh, Harmony says, thank you for answering. Which MBTI type would you like to talk about more, but people don't ask you to talk about as much?
I have talked about all of them so much, so as kind of a more underdog move, it would be interesting if people wanted to talk more about introverted sensing preferenced people, because these introverted sensors are the backbone of society. They are we can't have a civilization without a lot of introverted sensing. There's got to be a lot of people who are willing to not wonder or ponder too much about why they're doing what they're doing. They just need to do it. We need food in the grocery stores. We need clean water. I certainly need the electricity and the internet working, and we need people to just follow some procedures and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So, introverted sensors, no one wants to talk about them. They're obviously, most of them are not very interested in MBTI or typologies in general, but they are the backbone of society. No one wants to talk about them.
Okay. And how would the fourth slot of FE compare to the third slot of FE? Would an IXTP be able to overcome inferior FE, or would it always be lingering in their lives in the background
It's
from your
it's
experience?
it's not gonna be my good friend, my INTP friend of 20 years. He still doesn't want to talk to people, strangers. He does not enjoy the interactions with brand new people. When he was in San Francisco for some job meeting, he said, I'm really hungry and I want food. And I said, well, then go outside and get some food. He said, I don't have my designated extrovert with me. The man's 35 years old. I need a designated
Yeah.
extrovert. And he said, and it's like, why aren't you here? And I'm like, 'cause I'm in the next state over. I told him to bring me with him, by the way. That's 100% his fault. He could have absolutely came to get me and I would have went with him. But
I
yeah,
also shy away from talking to people. I
say
just
what?
don't really care to talk to new people.
Yes, Harley doesn't care to talk to people. Michael also doesn't care to talk to people. But does it get better? Absolutely. My good friend is far less tismy sounding than he used to be 20 years ago, by a large margin. He can almost act like a normal human being in conversation, and that's got to say something, right? He definitely got better at it. Uh, Now, I would say that for me, given my life experience, my situations that I put myself in over the past 10 plus years, extroverted feeling absolutely became a far more important part of my life. I have developed all kinds of coping mechanisms for going very long term with extroverted feeling without exploding on somebody and then just vomiting introverted thinking on them, telling them why they're wrong, this is why this is how it is, and blah 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 blah, and just doing the whole thing, and then irritating a whole bunch of people that I now don't get to talk to because they've slapped me and walked away. So uh, for me, extroverted feeling, a very core weapon that I use for my day-to-day life. Now that I'm an old man, you see.
What could society do without?
What could society do without? I think. Are we talking about cognitive functions or a particular personality? Because I think most personalities have some use in society for sure. A lot of course, a lot of the more thinking type personalities tell me we don't need personal feelings in society, and that I don't necessarily believe is true. As a matter of fact, I like to think that I know it's not true. I think that every time a man sacrifices himself to save his family, it's because he loved them. He had this attachment to them. He was concerned about them being okay, making sure that they were going to live and that they would be happy. And so the man goes out there and sacrifices himself. He goes to war, or he tries to fight off a home invader. I mean, things like that. I think that introverted feeling has a time and place, even in society. It's the willingness to do something completely irrational because you feel that it's right. And there are moments in which that can be absolutely helpful. As a matter of fact, in case you're wondering, there has been a lot of manipulation of introverted feeling to push certain agendas in society around the world lately. And so that is that's there's a practical use there. Imagine saying some things that triggers the feelings in people and then get them to do what you want. Even introverted feeling has a place. I think that if you want fast results when it comes to a logical solution, extroverted thinking is right there. Snap, snap, snap. Get all the information that you need as fast as possible. Implement it, use it, get it done. Then you of course need introverted thinkers. They're going to come up with their own. They're going to try to solve a lot more novel situations in a logical manner. So if you come across a problem that doesn't already have an immediate solution, boom, you throw some introverted thinkers on it. They're going to see if they can come up with a solution. And then, of course, you're going to need people who want to rise above other people, to be leaders, to be in charge. And because they believe that their plans, goals, and ambitions are the best, you're going to need some introverted intuition for that. Then, of course, and as I said, in terms of one of the most important ones for civilization, you need introverted sensing. You need people to be able to follow the rules, follow the procedures, do the streamlined stuff, do it over and over and over again so that everyone else can be okay. You've got to have those functions. I don't know if there is a function that you could just go without. And extroverted feeling being another one, you need people to just respect other human beings. Be tolerant, placate, get people to work together, be harmonious. You, of course, need that in a society as well. So what could society do without? I imagine most societies could do without corruption, but we're not talking about necessarily MBTI anymore. What challenges might an ISTJ face in leadership and how can they overcome them? So the biggest challenges that I've seen for the ISTJs, so I've seen some ISTJ managers before at, the places like a Walmart or Target or wherever the normal, everyday kind of stores. Their big problem is trying to keep everyone working together in of course, a more harmonious manner. That has been the thing that I noticed. They don't really care what this person's perspective is on something. You just need to do the work. So if you're someone who likes to think a little bit outside the box, do things a little bit differently, the ISTJ tends to come down pretty hard on that and not have any real respect towards the imagination of one of their employees, which can lead to all kinds of problems. So I think that's probably their biggest issue. They're also, of course, very strict, very inflexible. You follow the rules, follow the procedures, you keep doing what you're told. And if something is out of place, if it's not going by the script, they tend to need other people to help them out with solving the problem. So I think that's the biggest issue that an ISTJ. That's just, and of course that being strictly an opinion, that's the biggest one. I'm sure that there are potentially other issues that I might consider to be larger than that, but I think that's certainly a good one. Let's see. What else do we got here? Harley, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, what's going on?
I accidentally minimized it. Hold on. Is it possible for ENTPs and ESTPs to have social anxiety?
Sure. I think that if you're not used to being around a lot of other people, you're going to get anxious. You're going to wonder if you're going to end up doing the right thing. I I am not this. I have not always been this smooth talking, more confident in social situations kind of person. That took practice. Growing up, I was grounded to my room most of my childhood. I was not allowed to go out and talk to people outside of school. And then, of course, when you're in school, you are told to do your work, do this, do that. I try to chat up with people as much as I could, for the 30 minutes of recess back in fifth grade or whatever. And when you finally get yourself into a situation where you are around people far more often in a much more casual setting, you have no practice. You have very little practice, very little experience in that situation. You're likely to be anxious in that kind of a situation. And so once, like everything else, it takes practice.
And what are a few things? Oh wait, what are a few things that people misunderstand about ENTPs and potentially all types if you have that kind of energy?
Yeah, potentially all types if you have the energy. Well, I want to make sure that I'm always answering questions as they arise. So I I don't I people tend to go a lot by the stereotypes for ENTPs. I haven't nothing in recent memory tells me that there was a stereotype that didn't quite make a whole lot of sense. But misunderstandings. There was one time where, excuse me, I've got
Your
phlegm.
voice is losing. Get
Um,
something to
I'm
drink.
I'm going out. It's the voice is going out. Anyways,
Get
there
a drink.
was I don't have a drink nearby. I've got some NyQuil, which is
No,
would you count that as a beverage?
no.
I kind of treat it like one. So there was a time way back when this would have been about 5, 6 years ago, and someone told me that uh, ENTPs are always very nice, always very nice, and the reason for that was that extroverted feeling in the third position makes them very nice. Now, I can partly agree that when you first talk to an ENTP, assuming that they're vaguely mature, let's say they're 21, 22 years old, they have had enough practice using extroverted feeling, then they're going to appear very nice, very sociable. They're going to want to make sure that the person that they're chatting with is not put off by them or disrespected in any way. That can seem absolutely very nice. If you decide that you want to disagree with them, and granted, they're just 21 years old, so they use extroverted feelings for some very specific purposes. But if you decide that you want to say something that they disagree with, that niceness may very easily disappear. So, especially, and then typically tends to get worse as they get as the younger they are. Uh, they If they get sufficiently frustrated with humans in general, whenever someone says something that they believe is not true, sometimes insultingly so, they tend to take it a little too far. They say some things that they know for certain is going to upset the other party. It's that kind of a thing. My patience, my niceness has limits even in my old age. I do my best not to escalate situations anymore. And so if I'm having a disagreement with someone, I say, okay, that's good. And then start to walk away, get away from the situation. However, sometimes that's not always the case. And I usually kick myself afterwards and saying you just should have just walked away from that situation. Especially now that I'm more of a public figure, I do my best to keep those outbursts, those outspoken moments to a bare minimum. So things that people misunderstand about ENTPs: ENTPs are not nice all the time. They're not being nice just because they want to be nice. They're being, in quote, like maybe pleasant. They're being pleasant because there's a potential that they can get something out of you. Life is transactional, and maybe all they want out of you is just a pleasant conversation, but that's what they're gunning for. They're wanting something out of you. That's why they're being nice. Now, conceptually, is that being nice? Some people would argue that it's not, but that is one misconception that comes to mind about ENTP. And this was, like I said, I read this like many years ago. Ven, where did you go? Oh, is Ven Harmony? I didn't know that.
The current theory. So Harmony says I haven't seen any ENTPs be nice.
Say what?
Harmony says I haven't seen any ENTPs be very nice.
I haven't seen ENTPs be very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Is Harmony Ven?
Shattuck side. A neutral tone, in my experience, is still interpreted as rude or mean. People can't handle the truth. That's the hat.
People can't handle the truth. A neutral tone, in my experience, is still interpreted as rude or mean. People can't handle the truth. Well, neutral. I'm not sure what we mean by a neutral tone, but if someone's trying to be as level-headed in conversation as possible, I don't interpret it as mean or rude. It's someone trying to be logical in what it is that they're saying. I would, depending on the context and the words they were using. So if the function in the third position takes practice, how does personalities with introverted thinking in the third position practice it? Well, they use it. They want to, having a personal understanding of the logic being applied to a situation. So they want to practice it. It's something that it takes practice. Everything does. Pointing out, most of the time you see introverted thinking being used is when someone accurately points out an inconsistency in the logic of another, or in the logic of something they read, or something that was happening. But for ISFJs and INFJs, they still oftentimes will default back to an extroverted feeling position. Okay, that's what you believe. I respect it. Just you do you, and I'll have my own logic on it. You have yours. I am not sure what's happening in the chat now.
Then put an emoji, and now everybody's kind of obsessing over it. Any other questions, guys?
Goodness. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go back to the book of questions.
Don't tell me. I've got 1,000 of them. Some of them could actually probably make you very uncomfortable. Let me go through them real quick.
Not going to run out anytime soon. Why do you think so many people are claiming to be ENTPs now, especially more aggressively assertive people? So I put some thought into that. And back some time ago, does anyone remember when astrology was a big thing? I wasn't alive yet, but way back when, like in the, it was like the 70s? What's your sign? That was a thing way back when. People back then, they would get tattoos of their astrological sign. They'd wear earrings of their astrological sign. They would put on clothes or whatever. There was a lot of people that were into that, including introverted sensors. So once it became popular, the introverted sensors picked up on it and now became a part of normal tradition in society. So what I think we're looking at now is the emergence of typologies becoming a new fad. So now we're going to start seeing some introverted sensors maybe pick up on it. Obviously, I don't expect ISTJs or ISFJs to be super into it or get any deeper than just, oh, it's what everyone else is doing, so I guess I'll do the same. Some ESTJs I have met wanted to be ENTPs. So I've seen that. I don't come across many ESFJs ever on the Discord, but I imagine they'll show up. So that's we could be a point is I think we're seeing an emergence of typology becoming a fad, and so we're going to start seeing a lot more mistypes by granted, like I said, it's about 90% of the community mistypes themselves. So reminders that ESFJs and ESTJs do have somewhat of a preference for extroverted intuition. They can flex it a little more regularly than some of the other types, but it's very obvious that they don't live in their extroverted intuition. On the topic of people claiming to be ENTPs, there's a fair number of ESTJs that kind of jumping on that bandwagon. Astrology is still a big thing in the Middle East. And MBTI is apparently a super big thing in South Korea. So I thought about going there just to talk to the people. I'd have to have a translator, obviously. But then I realized that my entire trip to South Korea would be asking people what their personality type is and then saying no and then walking away. Do you expect MBTI tests to take job opportunities away from people? No, not to a significant degree, I wouldn't think. The United States, or at least in the United States, in South Korea, I have heard that if you put down the wrong personality type on your resume or on your application, you will immediately be turned down. That that seems good and bad. So the good being that if that person was typed correctly and that the people in charge were looking for that particular personality type, then it should be perfectly reasonable. Okay, I unfortunately, we don't need you for this position. We are looking for this very specific personality type. So move along. That seems like that could be very helpful. And yes, it may cost people some job opportunities, but why I think it's bad is that most people do not type themselves accurately. And so they end up putting down that they're a personality type that they're not. And so they end up costing themselves job opportunities. So what else we got here? There's some conversation happening in the chat. Anyways, I think MBTI can be a very helpful tool. They've been using it since World War II, and I think that it has some merit. There's obviously some correlations between personality type and what they're interested in, and what they're good at. I think that that's absolutely a thing. But unless people can look at themselves in an unbiased, objective manner, it's not really going to help people when they're constantly typing themselves as an N type. That happens so very often. If it were up to the community at large, we would end up finding out that, well, like I said earlier, 75-80% of the population is some kind of intuitive. And then society would collapse. If that were true, if 80% of the society was some kind of intuitive, then it would die. Yes, let's keep this to MBTI related stuff.
I've actually heard of that quite a bit. People are having to take personality tests when applying for particular types of jobs.
Well, if it works out and it becomes more of a normal thing, and then they'll say something like, this personality type wanted, then there you go. It makes it real easy to look for a position that you'd be good at. See a lot of people being excluded from the workforce completely. I don't think so. I think I think we have a multitude of different jobs in the world that many different personalities can do very well in. A lot of people like to rag on INFPs and say that, oh, they're useless, they don't do this, they're not logical at all, and blah 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 blah. Granted, it's true that INFPs care more about feelings in people. It simply means that their skill set needs to go somewhere else, like therapy, maybe psychology, positions in which getting to know the feelings, the motivations of a human mind is important for what do you call it, rehabilitation. That's it. It's just everyone certainly has a proper place. You just got to figure out where it is.
Right. Zoned out for a moment there.
You sure
Harmony
did.
says, I think 80% is too much. Could it
80%
be
is too much.
40,
Well,
maybe?
I'm saying that 80% intuitives would be too much for a society. And then it would just kind of break down. But I would think that most people would type themselves, and that's been my experience in the MBTI communities, is that virtually everyone wants to type themselves as some kind of an intuitive, and no one cares to point out the inconsistency in cognitive function use between two of supposedly the same types. It's kind of like this wild west of typology. You claim to be this type, let everyone know that you're this type, and then see if people believe you. So, what do you think of an ISTP and ENFJ pairing? I think that the ENFJ is going to want to be in control. And so, as long as the ISTP is okay with relinquishing certain freedoms of their life in benefit or in pursuit of the ENFJ's goals and plans, then anything could work out. Of course, it definitely helps to make sure you both have the same interests in mind. That's also important. That's what I think about pairings in general. I tell people, don't look for common cognitive functions, look for common interests. Do things, find someone that enjoys doing the things that you do them together, have good times, make it fun, and then over the course of time, you start to develop those chemicals in the brain that resemble love. Do that. Keep doing that, and I think you could absolutely work out. That's how that's how I think about most personality pairings. Let's see. I've read somewhere about personalities, shadow types, and haven't completely understand it. Could you explain something about it? So there's this concept that has floated around the community since I first learned about it, and there was the idea of these shadow functions, and they are referring to the other four functions that are not in your four type code, which is something to consider, given that yes, every person uses every function every day. Just well, as I said, the question is to what degree are we using these functions? What are we preferencing the most here? And so I've heard a number of different theories on it. In my experience, it's oftentimes very contextual. It would seem that you have some preferences, but some functions could be developed or less developed depending on what it is that you're doing with your life. Uh, so some people would say that, okay, well, let's say an ENTP, they would have extroverted thinking in the sixth position. Sixth position. So it's not so far down on the list that let's say it's not lower than introverted feeling, for example. So you should be using that more often. You would rather use your extroverted thinking than going to an introverted feeling thing. I don't typically have those moments. I when it comes to me using the function, I don't like to use extroverted thinking. I It's constantly being questioned. I will absolutely be looking for the inconsistent. Oh, just because these other people said it was true, that means it's true? Not big on that. So when it comes to extroverted thinking, although it's supposed to be this in this very specific position, I don't want to do it. I do not want to use it. I abhor it. I grew up in a family that constantly used it. And granted, it had to bug me a lot, obviously, as a child growing up. But I got I got pretty sick of it pretty quickly. And then, of course, you talk to teachers in class and like, hey, I know that it says this in the book, but how does that make sense along with this making sense? And of course, if you have gone to public school, you'll know that most of the teachers there are just mouthpieces to regurgitate the information that they heard and give it to you. And not many of them want to try and help explain why something needs to be true. So if you're an introverted thinker, you may end up finding that particularly frustrating. So a point being that when it comes to these shadow functions, I haven't seen a whole lot of consistency in how they get used. I haven't seen enough of it to give you a more concrete understanding of how this gets displayed, how they're manifested, how they're developed. It seems contextual. Your life experience will be different from that of other people, and you will end up developing certain functions perhaps a little bit faster than others. So the shadow function thing is, of course, theory. Life is tough, and we do our best to survive with the tools that we have. Let's see. But typically, when it comes to the eighth function, that does seem that has something that has been consistent that I have seen over these 10 years. Whatever functions in this eighth position, it's not that it's suppressed. It's not even necessarily that you're actively ignoring it. It's you're not aware that it's a thing. Whenever you are applying it, it's something that happens. It's certainly something more automatic, and it's not something that you really want to put a whole lot of energy in. That much I have seen. But as for seventh, sixth, fifth, varying levels of that energy being tossed in that direction. Let's see.
I think the next one is.
Say what?
I think the next one is. I think technology will make many types of personalities almost obsolete within the workforce in the next 10 years. Thought.
I could barely understand what you said. It sounded like gibberish.
Yeah, I think that technology will make many types of personalities almost obsolete within the workforce in the next 10 years.
Oh, okay. That was ambient disguise. Yes, personalities. Well, automation is going to take out some of the more tedious tasks for sure. Um, I'm sure that. Well, I'm actually not sure of that at all. It would be nice if we still had jobs and positions for certain personality types to fill. It may not be what they're best at, and may drive them a little nuts over time. But I would hope that we still have some. And granted, the job market has been, in the United States, the job market has been something to be concerned about for many decades. What are effective stress management techniques for INFPs? Effective
Is this
stress
better?
management techniques is what?
Oh, I was told my mic was messed up. Is it better now?
Yeah, I think it's a little better.
All right.
Okay. What are effective stress management techniques for INFPs? So in the INFPs that I have talked to, especially the ones that I have in my social circle as of late, they therapeutically cry They even sometimes plan out when they're going to cry, which strange for me, but if it helps, if it helps an INFP, then my goodness, I guess cry your eyes out. Pick a time and a place, and then go cry. Apparently, I'd imagine it's rather cathartic on some level. Let's see. Is it true that focusing on an object for 5 minutes at a time can improve extroverted sensing? I have no idea if that's true. My guess is if it's anything like it was for me in school, I will stare at an object, and then once I have looked over the object and saw, oh, it's this, there's some writing on it, don't really care, I've already read it before, so. And then imagination land. Now I'm staring at an object, but not really looking at it. Now I'm somewhere else. So I don't know if that does help. You could try it and then see if it works for you, and if it does, then great. My door's being knocked on again. All right. Need to put a big sign on the door that says streaming, go away. Anyway, once again, I apologize. I have family, grandpa dying, hospice. Anyways, do we have more questions? Oh, goodness. Or do we not have more questions? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and so far, no.
So far, no? All right, well, ask me a question from the book.
No, boy. I didn't actually think you would enjoy that.
We'll do our best to keep it moving until someone comes up with another question.
All right, all right. Let's see. What about, let's try, do you believe that you have many unique qualities?
Many? How many is many?
It just says many.
I don't think I have many unique qualities. I perhaps have a few unique qualities that might make me stand out a little bit more from the average person. But no, I don't think I have many truly unique qualities. No, I don't think so. I'm just a regular guy. And I'm a nice guy. For sure.
Right. Let's see. Do you believe that you can be calm, clear, and assertive when people are being demanding, critical, and difficult around you?
I believe I can. I don't. But when someone's being demanding of me, you just turned this into a game. And I'm going to treat it like a game because you don't demand things from me. You can earn things from me. Absolutely. We can have some transactions, some more formal transactions. We can talk about it, agree on things, maybe disagree, come to a conclusion, a resolution. Do not demand things from me because you're not going to like what happens after you demand something from me.
BES, ESTP, and ISFP pair.
I think that could work just fine. Once again, I think it comes down to whether or not you have some interest. I've known ISFPs that enjoy Call of Duty, for example. ESTPs, I have not met an ESTP that didn't play Call of Duty. So you could bond over that. And yeah, the ISFP might not be as good at it as you are, but they'll get better. They'll practice, and you'll have fun doing things. Maybe do the co-op campaigns in a some kind of first-person shooter. I think you could have a great deal of fun, and you could bond over that, get to learn something about them. So, they'll learn something about you. You learn some stuff about them, and then you're both more physical creatures. So, I imagine relations are still on the table there, and that of course creates more bonding. And yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
Uh, what are your thoughts on abuse and bullying as an ENTP?
Abuse and bullying. I found that I found that in both cases there is an extreme lack of extroverted feeling when it comes to bullying and abuse. These are people that don't care about whether or not there is going to be a social harmony between you and the other, them and you. And so I don't think it's an increase of any one particular function. Typically, if it's done out of anger or sadness or guilt or whatever, then yes, so you could say it comes from a place of introverted feeling, but I think it has more to do with a lack of extroverted feeling. And I think it's seemingly a very normal part of life, that this happens. But whether or not I think it's good or bad, um, conventionally, most people would say that bullying and abuse is bad. On the other hand, there are some positives that can be gleaned from experiencing those things. I had a childhood that, if CPS knew about it, people would have gone to jail for certain, if CPS had known. So the bad side, a lot of it sucked for me. I didn't enjoy it, understandably so. But the positives, I am more resilient. I'm more resilient to pain. I learned that when people say things to you, they're often just words, and is most likely their personal opinion. Excuse me. Most likely their personal opinion, and to take it with a grain of salt. So those are some things that I gained from my particular childhood. So it was there might have been some things that people would consider bad, but there are some things that happened that some people would consider good. Might toughen you up, builds character, as they say. So my voice is gone.
I'm going to drink.
No, I'm not moving. Now, if I get something to drink, then I'm gonna have to use the bathroom, and I'm just not gonna do that. So
Fair enough. Harmony asked, what about ESTP and INFP?
it's the same question over and over and over again. Look for common interests, not common cognitive functions. Now, in particular, the case of an ESTP and an INFP, they don't share any functions in common. However, the INFP is more likely to follow the lead of the ESTP in a relationship. So, as long as the INFP is tolerant of the ESTP's interests and will do them, they can theoretically find something fun about the ESTP's lifestyle that they can bond over. Now, is that going to be forever? Will the INFP eventually get bored of doing those things? That's quite plausible, but the INFP can find other things they can do on their own. They could try their hand at art, creating poetry, writing stories, any of those things. Now, granted, the ESTP is probably not going to be hyper interested in those things, but once again, you do your best to find things to bond over. Do your best.
I know the answer to most of these questions.
You know the answer to most of those questions.
Yeah.
All right, how many people are watching anyway?
You have 14.
Oh, just 14. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
we've been live for 3 hours.
We have been live for 3 hours. I think I think we can call it we can call it quits today since my voice is going out anyway.
Yeah.
And I've already been interrupted enough times with people trying to come into my room. So once again, another fantastic stream. I think what we'll do though with that book of questions, Harley, is what we'll do. We'll do a recording. We'll get some people together. We'll ask me some questions, and then we're gonna post it up as a Patreon video. What do you think?
Okay, that sounds good. I like
Seems
this
like
idea.
that's what we're gonna do instead. So I'd like to thank everyone for showing up today. There was some very fun questions. I do my best to get through them all. I'm sorry I missed a few. We'll see if maybe in the next one I can do some just more general interacting with anyone in the comment section. I'd like to thank Harley for being here. It was both Harley and Ven that came up with this idea to surprise me today with a book of 1,000 questions. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get through very many of them. So remember to like, share, subscribe if you're still around. Join the Discord by all means. Just at me in the Discord. Ask me whatever questions you couldn't think of today. And we will absolutely see you next time. Have a good